Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Small Screen Star Wars. As always, I am Julian Mush. I'm joined by Rachel Wilkinson.
Hey.
And we are going to be talking about today Obi-Wan Kenobi, Season 1, Episode 6, the big finale. Very excited to get into that. This is, I think, the season's been a little rocky. You know, there was touch and go there at times in the middle, but it totally nails the landing. Excited to talk about that. The log line for this episode, which is different from the one that's on Disney Plus.
Oh, okay.
On Disney Plus, it says just the exciting final episode.
Yeah, I know. I noticed that. I was like, that's not really a log line at all.
Right, yeah.
Like,
And so on IMDb, it's here. It says Obi-Wan is drawn into a confrontation with Vader as Luke's fate hangs in the balance, which actually is a log line, so that one works.
Yes.
Before we get into all that, I will just quickly remind all the folks at home that we are recording this live. And hey, Marcos is in the chat, which is great because I was just going to remind everyone, friend of the show, Marcos, it's been a while indeed. Just going to remind everyone, you can be a part of the conversation if you are here when we're recording live. And we do that on 3 separate feeds, on Twitch, on YouTube, and on Twitter. We're going to be going down to 2 at the end of July.
Have you decided yet?
I just have to keep asking people to tell me what's their favorite so that I can figure out what the best path forward is. Anyway, so join us live. We have been doing this typically every Thursday following the premiere on Wednesdays. Of course, we take breaks in between the Star Wars content. Ethan Summers is in the chat saying, yo, glad you're here. And we take breaks in between the kind of the Star Wars content, and we kind of go back to our regular Tower Babble content, which is going to be the plan for next week. And we have another film club right around the corner. We're doing, Rachel, what are we doing this month? It's your pick.
Boondock Saints.
Boondock Saints.
Yeah.
I just rewatched it the other day.
Yeah.
Not to spoil what my take is on it, but I didn't love it again.
What?
Yeah, still
You
don't
like
still
that
don't
movie?
love it.
I didn't realize you didn't like that movie.
Yeah.
When you said you'd seen it, I don't know about you.
Well, anyway, it's fine. You can listen to that on our Patreon, patreon.com/TowerBabbleCast, where for as little as $5 a month, you get a bonus film club episode every month. Last month, we did Waterworld. This month, we're doing Boondock Saints. And there's lots of back catalog there for you to enjoy as well. And that helps keep supports the show, keeps the lights on, as it were.
Yeah, come listen to Julian have bad takes on good movies.
That sometimes is true. I won't deny that. I do, and I have and listen, my record for picks in terms of like good movies, questionable, I would say.
Very questionable,
but
I would say. Yeah.
At the same time, these are movies I haven't seen before. I want to get into you guys are picking movies you like from the old days. I get it. That's fine. It's easy. I'm saying I'm trying out new things,
Fine.
Variety's the spice of life. So, speaking of variety, there is tons of stuff to talk about in this week's episode of Obi-Wan. So I want to get into it. In spirit of this episode that jumps back and forth, crosscuts every 2 seconds in this episode, I thought instead of doing each individual moment separately, I actually thought, you know what, screw it. Let's just go literally scene by scene through this episode. I know I said last week that we're not doing that as much anymore, but the finale, I think, calls for a little bit of extra, more refined recapping.
Right.
So that's what we're going to do here
today. Well, we had
today.
someone in the chat last week or the other week say that they like the scene-by-scene recap.
100%.
So, it's fine. And it's the finale, and there's so much to go through, so.
Right. And I think the way it's cut together, just like the flashbacks last week, inform the story. There's reason that they're not doing one chunk, then another chunk, and then instead of cross-cutting like they're doing here. So let's talk about it as the actual episode unfolds and how it unfolded. And we start this episode on Tatooine, and Reva has made her way to Mos Eisley, and she's looking for Owen Lars. Now, the first thing that comes to mind here, and again, not to be nitpicky right off the top, but how did she get here so fast? Did someone leave her a ship? I'm just curious. That's all.
I'm sure there's ships around that area.
Maybe
in that little escape place.
Maybe she took the remain. So remember, Vader pulls down the transport, right? Rips open the side. Maybe the engine seemed fine. Maybe
how are you gonna go into hyperspace with that if you ripped apart?
That's a good point.
Yeah, you can't just.
I don't know. Maybe they left her ship. She flew her own ship down, and Vader brought his own. So maybe they left her ship, which should also be odd. Like, why did Vader leave her alive? I know this is a question that a lot of people have been wondering, just generally speaking.
Right.
Like, what's the deal with this? Why is Vader being giving her this kind of sympathy here? At the same time, I think the episode does a good enough job last week. Kind of just saying they are just leaving her to die. I made the joke about that being like, trust this is going to go to plan, right?
Yeah.
You're going to die like I thought you would, and don't worry about it. So
just like last time, but
yeah. So hey, Marcos asked a very important question, and we will get to this when we get there. So
okay.
But he's asking about the broken Vader mask and if it's the same side as when he fought Ahsoka in Rebels. Now,
I know the answer to that.
I also know the answer to this, and we're going to save that to tease for later in the episode. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But so Marco, stick around.
Good question.
Yeah, good question.
Well, then see, Ethan says this episode deserves a scene by scene also.
Yeah.
So there we go.
So you know what? There you go. You're welcome. Is really what you're looking for there. So all that being said, she gets to it. Ultimately, doesn't really matter how she gets there.
Not really.
Because
I'm not worried about it.
Because Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
She gets there. And we then immediately cut back to this chase scene. Now, I really love the way that this chase, quote-unquote chase scene plays out, because it's very similar to me to Episode 4 and the chase that they are putting on the Tantive 4, which is the ship that Leia gets caught on at the very beginning of A New Hope, right? It's played in the same way. There's actually and from a musical standpoint, I think this series, if it's got Kevin Gregoire in the chat here asking what we're drinking.
Oh.
Do you wanna
yeah,
let us in on the information here?
So Julian has an Esterhazy IPA. It's from a small town called Esterhazy in
Regina.
Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
Regina. And I have it is a mystery beer from the brewery that I work for. It's unlabeled, but I'm pretty sure this one was called Home Base. And it was,
pretty sure.
Yeah, it was a collaboration with the band The Treble from around here. So it was a lemongrass wheat beer. But yeah.
It's what's funny about that, Kevin and Rachel, is that I had at one point, and you guys feel free to go repurchase this domain because I did let it lapse, but I had purchased at one point the domain Batman and Beer.
Oh.
And I was .com. And I wanted to start a podcast that was just covering episodes, Batman, anything. Could be a comic, could be an episode of the animated series, could be a movie, could be whatever. And then pairing it with some sort of beer, which I think is like a thing that people do in a lot of podcasts now. So I feel like at the time, it was very novel.
There's a lot of beer review podcasts, but they get popular pretty quickly if you know what you're talking about. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's not about...
No offense.
It was never going to be about the beer. It was going to be about Batman with a beer side palate tasting thing going. I don't know.
Yeah.
It never happened. So, like I said, you're welcome to kind of take that idea and run with it. So yeah. Where was I? Oh, yeah, so we're talking about this chase scene.
Yes.
I really like the way that it's shot. Again, it's shot in this very similar way, kind of with the Star Destroyer and looming large in the background. I think the Star Destroyer looks freaking great, like super detailed. I think it looks like they're using either the same models that they're using from Rogue One, which I also thought were great, which were like 3D scanned, if I'm not mistaken, of the original like miniatures that were used from the original series.
Oh, okay.
It really has this miniature look to it, which I always think looks better than like a CG ship, which is of course what the transport they're on, and it's kind of like weaving around, which I don't love as much, if I'm going to be honest. So
I feel like we can't be too hard on it because it's not a movie. Like it's
not
the same production level as cinema.
Yes, and
even with CGI.
Yes, and I think that's fair. We talked about this last week too, which is saying like there is moments in the show where it feels a bit cheaper, just a little bit cheaper, And again, like just being aware of that and accepting it. I'm certainly not judging the show on those merits. I will say that it's not a movie, but you know what happened in Toronto yesterday?
What?
It irks me because they always get this stuff and it makes me so angry. But they got to do, you had the choice. You could go to a full 6-hour marathon of all of Obi-Wan, including the finale, right?
Okay.
In the theater. Or just the finale. And the finale also had Deborah Chow and...
What?
Yeah. and Hayden Christensen appear. Yeah, I know, to do a Q&A at the end, and there was all these people dressed up.
And you didn't have to. Well, I'm assuming you had to pay, but
yes.
probably not a lot.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no one's gonna come to Winnipeg and do something.
I'm not saying listen. It's one. I tweeted about this. My thoughts on that were, I don't mind necessarily whether or not we get a Deborah Chow or a Ewan McGregor or Hayden Christensen. I'll take a Camille Nanjiani though, or Joel Edgerton, but I'm just saying, or an Ian McDermott, sneak peek for later in the episode. But what I'm saying is, they still could have aired it in theaters. I think it would have had
cool actually.
Yeah, I would have gone.
I
think this is a missed opportunity for theaters who are struggling. We talk about this on the regular show all the time.
Right.
There are these huge movie or TV moments, right? These finales, premieres, that draw millions of eyeballs every single day.
That's literally so smart.
And
I wasn't even thinking
why can't we go see them?
I wasn't even thinking about it across other TV shows. If you're I mean, everyone hated it, but Game of Thrones would have sold out easily to go watch the finale in a theater, and also missed out revenue. Come on, you can make some real money.
Yeah, and Marcos breaks up a good point here. He says the desert scene in this episode where it was so dark, I thought I was watching the White Walker scene from Game of Thrones in the last season, which also had a lot of critiques for being super dark. Now, I'm very fortunate to have a really awesome TV. I don't think have I talked about this before. I don't know if I've ever talked about. Anyway, I'm just kidding. I have mentioned it before. I have an OLED, which means that I get really inky blacks, and the contrast is really good. So when dark scenes like that, I have the benefit of not losing a lot of detail. But not everyone has that.
No.
In fact, most people who are watching this stuff on TV don't have their TV optimized. It's probably not in 4K. Most people don't have a 4K TV. These are what I'm saying is those are luxury things that most people don't have. So instead, they're getting a subpar quality experience. All my pitch here is that we should be airing these kind of big time TV shows in the theaters to get people back especially in summer. It's hot as balls. You need air conditioning. Head to Wednesday night. We're gonna meet up at the theater. We're gonna get $20 popcorn, and we're gonna watch Obi-Wan in the theater. Maybe not for the 30-minute episodes. That would be really crappy.
But the finale, you totally
finale
could.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So that's my pitch. Cineplex, if you're listening,
we'll tweet it at them.
Yeah. Well,
I always say I'm gonna tweet things at people, and I never.
You never do. Yeah.
With my 100 followers.
So Kevin says here, I call this living in a Tuesday night town. San Antonio is the same way. We get Bruce Springsteen on Tuesdays. Austin, 90 minutes up the road, gets him on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday with 500,000 less population. So, and then Marco says, I swear to God, Julian, I think you're sponsored with this TV.
Yeah, he talks about
definitely
TV
a good investment. Thank you. I do think it is a good investment. And my opinion on people who are if you're a cinephile or you really love watching TV and you love good movies and you love how pretty stuff on the screen.
Yeah.
Spend the extra money, get a good TV, and then look up. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. Just Google optimizing the settings to get the best picture quality, because when it comes out of the box, it's often not.
Right. Well, next time I buy a TV, I will get a good one because mine were free, so I'm not complaining about them right now.
Yeah.
Until they die.
Fair enough. Okay, so let's get back to the episode here. So, like I said, the Star Destroyer is chasing them down. Love this. They're the musical cues here, which I think are very good in this episode and across the whole. And part of that is that Obi-Wan's theme is composed by none other than the legend himself. But in other parts, that's not the case. He didn't compose the whole thing. So. You have these little plucks of different themes, and I think one of the things that the Screen Rant breakdown mentioned, and I'll kind of retread here, is that they use bits and pieces of different themes, but not all of them, in the sense that hey, we're leading up to that. You're going to get that in the movie that this is leading into, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they do that a little bit of that in Rogue One as well, which I actually always appreciated there as well.
Right.
That's Michael Giacchino. So, and this musical cue here is the chase theme that happens in Empire, I believe, when they're outrunning or trying to outrun the Empire. And it's a really fun theme, and they use bits and pieces of it here, and it's appreciated to me. So Vader's chasing them down. Roken tries to keep spirits up as they, and this reminds me of episode 8, by the way, of the Last Jedi, when they're being chased by the First Order and they're kind of being bombarded the whole time. It's very similar to that. They have a bad motivator. It sucks when that happens.
Always those motivators.
Yeah. So he's trying to keep everyone motivated. And they're heading for Tessin. I Wikipedia'd it. Tessin. There's no entry for Tessin. We don't know what that is.
New place.
Correct me if I'm wrong there. And Leia is trying to distract other kids from the danger using Lola. Lola has little legs, which I don't know if we saw them before, but that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And this kicks off the episode with a bang. I think you kind of it starts on Tatooine, and you have this moment where it picks up right from the very end of last episode, where Reva learns where all the very key information that was left in that message to go to find Luke, essentially.
Right. Yeah.
So, and then you have this kind of big bombastic chase sequence with the Star Destroyer. It feels very Star Wars. So I'm really into it here. We cut back to Tatooine. Owen and Luke are at like the shop. They're buying a new belt for the speeder. I like this little interaction here where he's like, well, I needed a new one. And he's like, well, and they're kind of like poking at each other. But Owen gets the bad news that Reva's out to get him. Yes. So any thoughts on this first couple sequences here?
I mean, yeah, same as you. I love that chase scene. I like when we get to see Star Destroyers in their like glory, right? Mm-hmm. And I always forget kind of like how giant they are and how imposing they are. And like when you're like chasing down like a tiny little transport ship, it's got to be terrifying. Like it's yeah.
This is okay. So Kevin just said I had a very good joke. So listen, I'll probably like mess it up here, but he says, at my age, there's a pill you can take for a bad motivator, but I'm dumb. So I'm out. Thank you all. Please tip your waitstaff. Yeah. No, that's good. Thank you, Kevin. I love a good dad joke. So that's great stuff.
Same. Yeah.
So, I want to highlight. So what I think the series did so well in the first 2 episodes, and I think it kind of misses in the kind of 3, 4, 5 episodes, is these small little details, like this moment with Luke and Owen in this shop, right, where he's kind of frustrated with him, but later on in the episode, it kind of comes full circle when he's kind of challenged on, you must really love him, like he's yours, and all these kind of things, and it's like, you're gonna take care of him, and he's like, I will, and all that kind of stuff happens later. We'll get to that, but these small little moments are what make this series good, in my opinion, and this episode spends a lot of time with those.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wish that they had kind of stuck to their guns a little bit in terms of like the overall tone of the whole series, and just said, no, we're really going to be more slow, and the series is maybe do it over, instead of 6 episodes and kind of dropping in these like mini action beats that aren't as great, really just slow it down. There's some core elements we're going to touch on, right? But ultimately, this is just about Obi-Wan. It's just about Vader, and in this case, his relationship with Luke and Leia, and we lose a bit of that in the middle of the season. We come back to it here, and I think it totally brings a whole new energy to the series.
Yeah,
so,
I would agree with that. Yeah. I think they're taking their time in this episode, and it's not chunky. The dialogue wasn't as kind of like I felt in this one. It was,
I agree,
a lot more natural, a lot smoother. So.
And this episode comes in at 48 minutes long, which is appreciated in a finale.
Yes.
there is kind of these. A couple of episodes are only half an hour. Which is frustrating when you're only talking about 6 episodes. A lot of the news right now is around how successful the show is. It's now considered fresh on Rotten Tomatoes.
Okay, so it's gone up now on Rotten Tomatoes. I think it was getting a little bit of a, I don't know. It's
Star Wars fans can never be happy.
I know. It's just funny. Even people, I picked up some serving shifts at work this week, and I'm wearing my R2-D2 earrings, and I get actually a lot of comments on them.
Oh, really?
I've never had anybody notice like earrings or jewelry that I wear, but people pick them up all the time. And immediately I got asked, like, they're like, oh, how do you, like, are you liking Obi-Wan? I'm like, yeah.
And they're like, are you not?
Yeah, and I'm like, what? But just the tone, and I was just like, man, I like everything, though. It's pretty hard to, like, make me, like, gutturally, like, not like
It's a tough crowd out there. People have high standards for Star Wars. I think as the more of the stuff we get on TV, I think people get a little frustrated that we're not getting movies. whether or not they're aware of that's the frustration or not, I think that is a part of it.
Maybe.
And we will be getting movies, and then I think the funniest, the funny thing about that is that likely the next movie we're going to get is the Taika Waititi movie.
Oh, I'm sure it's going to be so good.
Which it's going to be very good, but it's going to be very different. And I think that's last time we had a very different one.
Funny? Like
100%.
I feel like it's got to be funny.
I've never seen a Taika Waititi movie that wasn't funny.
I feel like Star Wars is always kind of like jokey funny. I think it'll work, but
you have to. There's a balance you need to strike. But I think as long as I think you can do a comedy.
Yeah.
There was going to be a Star Wars outtakes or something like that. There was going to be this animated comedy show that was going to be on Adult Swim.
Okay.
Never Seth MacFarlane, I think. Or that sound right? No, it was the Robot Chicken people that were going to do it, but it never ended up happening. There was some couple bits and stuff. It can be done.
I mean, it's kind of like Spaceballs. I'm assuming they got somewhat
but that's
rights to do that. But...
Well, in Spaceballs, it's different because that's a direct parody.
Yeah,
I think
a parody.
You can have funny moments in Star Wars. There is already that stuff.
Oh, of course there is. Yeah.
So if it's all that, I think you lose a little bit of something. I think if you're doing a Taika movie, which they are doing, as long as and it sounds like they're carving up their own space, you're going to use new characters and that kind of stuff. I think it'll be a lot easier for people to digest.
Right.
We're not going to get a lot of that not my Luke stuff in that stuff. So that should be better.
Yeah.
So also, by the way, this idea that a speeder bike needs a belt, I think, is very funny to me because I don't think of belts as things that people need they have all these made up things like motivators in Star Wars, but this needs a belt belts. So it makes me think of a snowmobile because speeders are in either a snowmobile or a motorcycle, I guess.
Right.
Combination of the two depending on where you
motorcycles, I guess, but they have wheels and
right.
It's different.
Right. Well, cars have belts too. I mean,
those are their fan belts. Isn't that a thing that always breaks on cars?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we get back to the chase, and let's cut to the chase here. And Leia doesn't want. Where was I actually? Yeah. So the truth of the matter is, despite Roken trying to keep everyone's spirits up, the fact of the matter is that the ship is breaking down, and they need more time. So Ben's idea is to kind of separate from the rest of them and draw Vader's attention away. He knows that if he leaves, it will buy time for Roken and the others to get away, right? So we cut back, and Leia does not like this plan, and she's yelling super loud and then the rest of everyone's like, wait a minute, you said you were going to stay with us.
Yeah.
And so the others agree with Leia on this, but Obi-Wan has to make this speech about hey, me surviving isn't important. It's about you guys. You've done all this work trying to save the Jedi.
Right.
Let me save you. You are the future. And there is, by the way, specifically, and we haven't talked about this because I don't know the details as much of the extended universe stuff, but one of the kids, and the kid that was being saved in the second episode, that Haja was kind of although he was getting paid to do it, was still helping them escape.
Oh, yes.
Is a character from the extended universe, a character that eventually does become a Jedi and trains at Luke's
cool.
academy. But
I
don't remember their name off the top of my head, and nor do I fully understand that backstory, so I don't want to get too much into it. But it is interesting when he's like, "You are the future." He's obviously talking about Leia specifically, but that kid is on that ship. And the idea that not only is she the future, and we know her whole story at this point, but we also have this other person we don't know their story and their future. So that does land for me. Did that kind of little speech he say does that land for you?
I really liked that. No, I thought it was perfect because it's we're finally seeing. I mean, not finally seeing. We've been seeing more and more of it throughout this series, but we're getting that old school Obi-Wan now. So we're getting him back. He's being that selfless person, right? He's making sure that, telling these people you've been sacrificing yourselves for 10 years basically for me and the Jedi to help us and protect us, and it's my turn again. It's
right.
I need to go back to protecting people again. So yeah, I was gonna say, did you because it was almost the same dialogue about how much time do you need?
Right.
And I was like, did you like this dialogue better when he was just we don't, not enough, basically?
Yeah, this is. Well, I mean, it's better. It feels. I mean, what you said before. I mean, the stakes of this episode feel higher, and
yeah.
the dialogue, it feels more naturalistic. There is a bit of that like kind of like grandstanding type dialogue that you get from Star Wars, but like that fits the mood.
Right.
So
yeah.
that worked for me. It did not work last week.
No,
but,
I know. But no, I liked his speech, and yeah, no, I'm just liking everything about this episode so far.
Well, I think what's great about this piece specifically is that, and this is true, I think, of this episode across the board, is that we see Obi-Wan kind of getting his feet under him again. And we saw that a little bit last week, and it was happening. It was happening throughout the season, and that is his arc here. But it is satisfying to see that pay off, and we see it pay off in a couple different places in this episode. And this is one of them where he specifically says to Haja, make sure you take care of Leia, get her home safe. And he's like, well, the word of a fake Jedi might not be worth enough, to you. And he says, it's good enough for me. And that obviously is something that's very motivating for Haja, but it also speaks to Obi-Wan's character, because remember earlier in the season, he was like, I knew I shouldn't have trusted him. No one's coming, Leia, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
He was bitter and angry and non-trusting, and he's kind of reclaiming those things, and you're seeing it in action, which is the, show don't tell stuff in action.
No, yeah, exactly. I like that they kept Haja throughout the series a little bit more. I thought he was kind of going to be a one and done character, but yeah, I'm liking every time we see him on screen. So
yeah,
it's...
he did grow on me.
Yeah. At first I was like, we're never going to see this guy again. He's just kind of a goofy, whatever, one-off kind of character. But I was like, okay, they kind of kept him around. I'm like, not mad at it.
And by the way, Rachel is in the room here with us. She's normally just a still on the side of the screen.
Yeah.
But no, she is here live. And
I'm trying to show up more often now in person.
Yeah, it's nice. It's appreciated.
Yeah, no, it's I don't know. It's more fun in person. And I mean, obviously, we kind of couldn't throughout the pandemic. We were trying to be respectful and distance, right? So, but I mean, now it's a little bit more. I mean, chill,
and especially if we're in the new setup here, it's not perfect. This desk is much too small.
It is too small.
So
we're like cramped.
There
are
there are tweaks that we could probably make.
Yeah,
and we will, because if we want to get to at least a 3-party setup, we're gonna need to make some changes.
We could never fit
Jeremy in here. There's no way. You just be like
He's
in the
tall.
back.
He can just stand in the back.
Yeah, exactly. So, anywho. So Leia, like I said, Leia doesn't want to let her go. We make this big speech. And so we cut back to Tatooine. Owen and Beru are prepping for the coming of Reva. Now, this stuff is kind of happening quickly as this episode progresses. So we're cut away from Tatooine, and by the time we cut back, he's already home, and he's talking to Beru. And for the record, this might be the most Beru has ever had to say ever.
Yeah, I know.
So, and she really, I think, actually makes an impression here. She's played by Bonnie P.S., or I don't know how to say that last name. Piesse. And
looks French.
She's got this kind of, now I'm gonna, with all due respect to my country bumpkin friends out there and listeners, she's got this kind of like hard edge that the people that I know that live in the country have, like, handy with a gun, has a plan.
Yeah, like, there's coyotes out back, we'll get them.
Yeah, exactly. So, she's pulling out the blaster rifles, she's tossing them to Owen, and he's like, "What's going on?"
I loved it.
Yeah, it's great. I really like that sequence, and it's like, no, we're not leaving. We're staying at this house, and we're protecting, our home. Now, of course, tragic when you think about how they die in their home.
But it makes so much sense.
It's even worse, they're crawling out of their home.
I know. But when you think about this scene, and then like later on where you're like, yeah, I bet you they died trying to defend their home again. Mm-hmm. Like they weren't just gonna run. Like they're
you got to, what's crazy is you got to wonder how many Imperials they killed before the one with the flamethrowers got to them, because they held pretty well on their up against a Force user.
I was like low-key hoping they were gonna kill her. I was like, it's gonna be so badass if like Beru kills this Inquisitor.
Right?
I was kind of hoping for it. I'm like, that would give her like such a really like just cool whatever storyline.
Big glow up
for
her.
People would probably flip out and be really mad.
Yeah, maybe, but
be like, whatever, she's Force sensitive, you couldn't kill her.
As Kevin Gregor says here, the worst thing about Star Wars is Star Wars fans. So yeah, I personally would like that because it would, in this case, Reva's injured.
Well, yeah,
so
exactly.
It makes sense that they could maybe get one up on her, and it kind of gives way more. It gives a bit more character depth to Beru and Owen, who are characters who people like to remind us all the time are very important because they raised a Jedi,
right?
But we know very little about them. And
even this whole interaction, the fight that they put up with her though is great. Like they held their own, and I don't know.
Yeah. So we cut back to the chase, and Obi-Wan they're having a little heart-to-heart, and it's very cute. And he gives Leia the holster that belonged to Tala. How they got it back, unclear. But
he said something. He was like, so-and-so found this.
Yeah, he said that Haja got it, but I don't know how that happened. She died. She literally blew herself up.
Oh, yeah.
So...
yeah, I don't know. Maybe it blew off her.
I don't know. You know what? Doesn't matter. Star Wars. It's nice because it's very on theme here, right?
Yeah.
And it fits Leia and her character. So she's given this holster, and it's basically Obi-Wan saying, "I trust you to take care of yourself."
Yeah.
Yeah. But despite the fact he's like, "I'm not going to give you a blaster."
I
You're
love
only
that.
10.
She's like, "It's empty," and he's like, "I'm not going to give you a blaster."
Right. Exactly.
I laughed so hard at that. I thought it was so cute. I'm like, good job, Obi-Wan.
Right.
Yeah.
There is some moments that, like, he says, like, you're only 10 years old, and then he says, and there's a brief pause. He says, "But you won't always be." Right?
Yeah.
So, and it's just kind of this idea that, like, hey, I'm not always going to be here to protect you. You need to be able to protect yourself. This is a sign that that I trust that you will grow into that person. I got to give Vivian Lyra Blair a lot of credit. She's obviously the one who plays Leia.
Yeah.
And she is great.
She's so good.
One thing that my girlfriend texted me today, and she said, "Did you know that she has blue eyes? The actress does, and they had her wear contacts."
Oh, really?
To have brown eyes like Leia does.
I mean, it makes sense that they would do that because again, that's one of those nitpicky things that people would get mad about.
And it's like that's an easy thing to do.
Yeah,
right. It's always.
I don't know how big. You must have to make special contacts for a 10-year-old though.
I think aren't your eyeballs the same size your entire life?
That is an insane thing to say.
But babies' eyes are huge on their face. That's why, and your head grows into your eyeballs. I'm pretty sure that's true. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You're definitely wrong. That's why, like, as you get older, like, your eyes change, and sometimes you need glasses, sometimes you don't because your eyes grow, and like.
No. It's not because that's different. That's different from whether or not they're growing or not. Anyway, at least that's what I think.
I'm gonna Google it because I cannot with this.
Okay. There's this moment here in this scene where he says, "Tell your father I tried," which feels very defeatist. I'm curious why they kept that line in there, because it sounds like he is kind of saying, admitting that he's not coming back from this, or he really believes that he's not coming back from it. And maybe that's true, but the rest of the episode doesn't give me the impression that he feels that way. And although there is that one moment a little bit later on where he says, either if I die or he dies today, either way, it ends today, right? That's the only other kind of bit that makes me feel that way, but it just, there's no reason to tell a 10-year-old Leia that to tell him that I tried. You know what I mean? Like it just seems like that's not the message you want to be sending her.
Yeah.
But I guess I understand he's in a conflicted place here in terms of like what he think is actually going to happen. Yeah. Did you find the answer to that?
Yeah, you're wrong.
Oh, damn it.
Your first 2 years of life, your eyes grow bigger, and then when you go through puberty, they grow bigger, and then in your 20s, they're fully grown at about 24.
But okay, so that's fair enough. Okay.
Your eyes don't get bigger in middle age, but like you don't have the same size eyes as like a newborn baby. That would
whatever. Be insane. Okay. So there's this big hug and this like goodbye, and she asks him to promise to come back. So she didn't really hear him when she said to tell your father I tried.
Yeah.
And it's nice. And he's like I will. And again, whether how much he believes that is unclear.
Right. Yeah.
Then there's this moment alone where he's in with his own feelings, and he's staring at his lightsaber, and he's trying to speak with Qui-Gon again, and he says like, "Hey, like I said before, either I die today or he dies today. Either way, we're gonna end this." And I think it's touching. I was like, "Ooh, is this the moment where we're gonna get Qui-Gon, space ghost on a ship?"
I was thinking, but then no. We didn't.
No.
Yeah.
and like without skipping to the end, everything that they've done with kind of teasing Qui-Gon, I think totally works, and we'll talk to it when we get there.
Yes, I think so too.
Roken calls him out for making this decision. Obi-Wan making this decision to go out alone, and he's saying like, "Hey, listen, you can say all you want that it's about saving us and it's about protecting the refugees and all that kind of stuff, but really it's about you and Vader, and in some ways it's a selfish decision."
Right. Yeah.
And Obi-Wan doesn't really grapple with that. He just kind of just takes the punch and just accept that. I think he realizes that is true. But I do like that someone's calling him out for it. Roken, another character that grew on me throughout the season.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's a new character. I don't know if we'll see him come back for anything, but it would be nice if he made appearances in in animation or something over the. This time.
Yeah, there's plenty of space for more stories, for more kind of rebel stuff.
100%.
So, yeah.
Maybe he makes an appearance in what's it called? Andor.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't wait for Andor.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited.
We didn't really talk too much about that trailer. We'll talk a little bit more when we get closer to the series, but it looks so stylish. Like it just looks very good. And when it was originally pitched as this spy story based, this secret agent rogue squadron story, it's so cool. And it was originally going to be by the creators of that USSR spy show, but it's not by them anymore. But the point that same theme seems to have stayed around, and it's kind of got this really menacing feel to it. I really can't wait. It was one of the best things that came out of Celebration, I think. Okay, anyway, so Obi-Wan leaves on a quote-unquote escape craft. I didn't, again, if I'm just being nitpicky, I think the visual effects of it leaving, the ship leaving the other ship looked like a cheap video game. It just didn't look great to me. Also, it's a pretty freaking huge escape craft if that's what it is. It just seems like a shuttle or something.
Yeah, it's definitely not. I can't remember what they called it specifically. They called it something else too. It doesn't matter, but I kind of thought of it as this, similar to the Phantom and Ghost.
Yes.
How Ghost kind of or Phantom clicks into Ghost, something kind of like that. So it's not like an escape pod. It's like an actual
it's
ship.
An additional ship.
Yeah, it probably just doesn't have I don't know if you can jump or
it
not.
does have hyperdrive because he uses it later to get to Tatooine.
Yeah, he does go to get to Tatooine. You're right.
So it's like a fully equipped.
Yeah.
And so he leaves on the escape craft, and we cut back to the interior of the Star Destroyer. And I always love the bridge of a Star Destroyer. People milling about. I don't know what they're doing. They're walking around with their hands behind their back, looking out the window.
I love the Imperials always with their hands behind their back, just staring out the window.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we have Vader kind of watching over this. The Grand Inquisitor's there, and the Grand Inquisitor is making this argument. They're like, hey, we shouldn't go after Obi-Wan. We should stick with the refugees. We can end this kind of the path, this Jedi refugee program. Cut it out at the root if we stick with them.
Yeah.
And instead of going after just one Jedi, he says. And Vader's response is he's not just any Jedi, which of course we know that the connection there. And again, I like how this comes full circle, and it comes back later when he's dealing with Palpatine. So Vader decides to follow Kenobi instead, and you get this kind of cool shot of the ship kind of turning away as the other one makes its escape. It totally worked for me. And back on Tatooine. Anyway, before we jump back to Tatooine, any thoughts on any of this last little bit of stuff?
Yeah, honestly, not so much that we can, haven't already gone over, to be honest.
Okay.
But yeah, I just like that in both scenarios. Like you have Roken telling Obi-Wan, you're, this is about Vader, and then you have at the other end, an Inquisitor doing the exact same thing, being like, why?
This is clearly about something. A little bit more,
it's like,
I don't know for sure, but it seems like this is personal.
This is clearly about you too. And it's like, well, yeah, obviously that's what we kind of all want to see. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. So, well, yeah, obviously the show would be very different if she because if you think about it, the right tactical move is the Grand Inquisitor's plan to go after the refugees. That is the better move because what's Obi-Wan going to do? He's just going to escape.
Yeah.
And then it's just it is just technically one Jedi. Vader makes
and that's the thing with with Vader. If it wasn't Obi-Wan, Vader would just blow up that ship with all the people and children on it, and then go find him,
right?
Because he would just, he's that terrible. But because it's Obi-Wan, he can't let it go. He's just gotta, he's Anakin.
He's
still.
he's got to burn his saddle. He's got somewhere to go. Yeah. Okay. So where was I? We're back on Tatooine.
Right.
And Owen tells Luke to stay inside and run, and he's in the little droid cleaning lab or that they've got that we of course see a lot of in episode 4. And tells him that listen, the Tuskens are raiding, which I like. This is a little just quick little dialogue here. He's not going to give him the specifics of what's going on. He's just saying, listen, if something happens, make a run for it. I think it's interesting because the way that they stage all this, they make it very clear that Luke did not see the lightsaber.
Yes.
So that he can be amazed by the lightsaber when he's 16 or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, they basically made it so he didn't really even he sees her a little bit, but she's probably more of just a shadow and
well, she's wearing all black.
Yeah, it's just for all he knows, maybe it was just a Tusken,
right.
Anyway,
so he says, "I'm not afraid," which is, of course, a line that he says in Return of the Jedi. Right. And just we mentioned throughout this series that each episode seems to mirror one of the main chapters from the original trilogy and the prequels. So we're now at the Return of the Jedi phase. There's a lot of connections here. Obviously, this is one of them. We'll talk about more as they happen. Okay, so that's that. It's weird because they're doing these really quick back and forth cuts, and this is one of them. It's a little bit longer. We get back to the chase, and Ben is approaches some random rocky planet. We're not sure what it is. Vader asks for his ship to be prepped so he can face him alone. Right. Love the line, "I will face him alone." Yeah, very good.
The best.
Mm-hmm. And then we get this. This is where it does not look cheap to me. This cool shot of the Lambda shuttle leaving the Star Destroyer, heading out towards the planet. Very pretty.
So good. Yeah.
So Ben lands and finds that Leia left Lola with him.
Yeah, so cute.
And he I guess she snuck into his pocket or whatever. And then he kind of has this deep breath and prepares to face Vader. Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of the brief calm before the storm. Before we get into the kind of action bit here,
right?
Any other thoughts?
No, not really. That was all. It's all quick there, right? It's all just
back and forth,
very quick, kind of back and forth, and I did love the whole her sneaking Lola into his pocket, and he just kind of smiles. It's just very sweet, and he puts her up on the
dash.
On the dash. Glad he didn't take her with him because she probably would have just got smashed. I was hoping it wasn't gonna be some weird thing she distracts Vader for a quick second, and then Obi-Wan, whatever, get in there. That'd be insane. So I'm very glad they didn't do anything silly like that, and they just kind of left her.
Yeah, you can't put it past them. They very much would be willing to do that.
No, I know. That's what I was thinking. I really hope that they're not gonna use that in any way in this fight. But yeah.
Yeah, and Kevin brings up. He says, "I thought they dealt with very well with the plot points that the original trilogy left them. Mm-hmm. Not perfect, but I don't see how they could have done much better." And I largely agree with that.
Yeah.
I think when you're dealing with these prequels, which is ultimately what this is, just another prequel,
right?
It's a sequel to the prequels, but still a prequel to the original trilogy.
Yes.
And a lot of the touch points here are prequel touch points, and so you'll get and things. And what I mean by that is not touching on the things from the prequels, but they are moments of dialogue or moments in these set pieces that are designed to call back to moments from the original trilogy.
Right.
And in those moments, and I was going to call on this, I think, later in the episode, closer to the finale, but I'll mention it now because Kevin brings it up here, that you're kind of between a rock and a hard place if you're a writer in these scenarios, because you want to call attention to some of these cool things. I think there's something to be said about saying, "I'm not afraid." That's kind of a universal line. it does call back without being like on the nose about it.
No,
right?
And that's definitely something that like a kid says too. Like, it's like, I'm not scared. Like, especially if he thinks it's Tuscans. Like, it's a little bit. It's something that he deals with, or they have dealt with in the past. So it's very on point for Luke too.
Right, and so in like the kind of worst example of this is Solo, where they're like, we get the backstory of Han's last name, and it's lame.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't, like, are we really,
yeah.
Like, is this really what we wanted? The answer is no, right?
Yeah.
I don't think anyone wanted that out of that movie. I still think that movie is largely pretty good, but that is a tough pill to swallow. But what I'm saying is, it's hard, I think, or maybe not hard, I think it's easy as a writer to fall into these traps of like, isn't, like, we'll just do this like that, or we'll do this. We'll remember when he said this, we'll make a reference to that here, right?
Right.
And they could have been more on the nose about it. I think this is much more subtle. It's much more nuanced.
Yeah.
It feels natural. I think there is moments that aren't perfect. And there's one of them comes up later, like I said, closer to the end of the episode. But in this case, I think a lot of this stuff is pretty good. So, and where were we? Ben lands, he got Lola with him. So now we get into the action sequence.
Mm-hmm.
So this is quick cross-cutting. And I guess before we get into that, I'll mention that we've been cutting back and forth, and each of these stories is kind of mirroring each other in some way.
Right.
So there's a looming threat. We're preparing for some sort of encounter that they're aware of. There is in Reva's case, she's being motivated by anger and rage.
Right.
In Vader's case, same thing, making decisions that are maybe not as smart as if you were thinking about it more analytically or more thoughtfully, you might not make those same decisions. So a lot of those things mirror each other. So I appreciate that happening here, and kind of again why we're talking about it in this kind of way. So Reva approaches the homestead. She breaches the perimeter. At the same time, Vader lands on the planet, again mirroring each other. I do love, by the way, as he lands the Lambda shuttle, he gets off the ship, and we get this amazing side profile.
I love this shot.
It does remind me a lot of the standoff between Obi-Wan and Maul in Rebels.
Oh, yeah.
Which I'm still hoping we can get a better animated version of. or live action version of like flashback to at some point.
Right.
But in this case, it mirrors that a little bit, kind of this like fighting plane, 2D fighting game almost. And you've got this big moon in the background, and these rocks on the side, and a shuttle on the other side. It's very nice looking.
Yeah, that's just again one of those things where I just can't wait for artists to make posters, and make their renditions of it. I just thought it was just beautiful.
Yeah. No.
I don't know if there's supposed to be any like. I was trying to just in my own brain if they purposely had any reason for like having all the rocks on Obi-Wan's side and like just the basically nothing on Vader's, or like Vader's more alone, whereas Obi-Wan's kind of more surrounded by like love and people that he cares for and other things. But maybe it's going a bit too deep.
I don't think so.
I think the rocks are meant to be.
I think there is something there. It's almost like you'd almost want it the other way around, with like Vader being with these kind of jagged rocks.
Yeah, I know. Hey,
and kind of serenity on the other side. But maybe what it's kind of showing this mirror to each other, and that's kind of what they're trying to show there.
Right, yeah, that's true. No, I just thought it was just it just looks so good.
Yeah. Like I said, no notes. It's the probably the prettiest shot of the whole episode.
Yeah, honestly, it's
so we have this couple lines of dialogue, and I almost like I was really having a hard time not just writing down everything Vader said. So I ended up doing basically that. And he says, "Have you come to destroy me, Obi-Wan?" And he said, and then of course we get this amazing moment where Obi-Wan says, "I will do what I must," which, of course, is a callback to Revenge of the Sith. Now, this is one of those moments where, because it's a sequel to the prequels in this scenario, you have to wonder whether or not Obi-Wan is intentionally calling back to that for Vader's benefit,
honestly,
right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I hope that's the case. And he says it a little different, like the cadence is different.
Yes.
And he does, all that being said, he does take on the Form 3 stance.
I loved it. People have been waiting for it. There's like the few things that people have been wanting him to do. And
they saved it all for this last episode.
Yeah. It was honestly perfect. I was like, yes, he did the thing.
Yeah, I mean, it is really cool. What I like about it is that it doesn't have the same kind of like, he's doing it, but it's not quite as precise. It's a little bit more. It's got a little bit rougher around the edges. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. So
I saw a really funny tweet. I follow this girl. I think probably lots of people follow her, but she's called Shaylo Wren on Twitter. Do you follow her? She's hilarious. So. But she said something about she made a tweet and it was like, oh, if Obi-Wan doesn't do the Form 3, like the
stance,
the pointer
the
finger pointing thing,
yeah.
I'm gonna like throw myself into traffic. And her tweet got like flagged as like, do you need
suicide?
Help?
Right.
Yeah. And I was like, oh my god, I was just laughing. I'm like, oh, that's really funny.
Yeah.
But she can rest easy then.
Yeah, she's fine. Everyone relax. He did the thing. It's fine. But like, here's the thing. Like, again, it's one of those things that people wanted because it was, over time, people just kind of attached to it kind of was like, that's the thing that people liked for whatever reason. They're like, I really like when Obi-Wan does that dumb finger pointing thing.
Oh, I love it.
And so they're like excited to see him, and what they're doing here through action and not by dialogue, they're showing that he has regained. Yes. Although they do the dialogue earlier where he says you've regained your power or whatever he says.
Well, yeah, later on, but
he we see that he's kind of back in form, right? And that's cool.
Yeah.
So Vader says, "Then you will die," and then we get this fight scene. It's very aggressive.
That's also not a callback, but he says the same thing to Ahsoka.
Right. Yes.
When he's gonna fight her, when she sees Anakin, and you know what I mean.
I think that's a great point, and I think there's some obvious comparisons between this fight and this fight with Ahsoka.
But I just thought it was kind of cool that that he used the same line on Obi-Wan and Ahsoka.
Here's a question for you. Okay. If we're gonna compare these moments, and you got if you think about it in the timeline perspective, the fight with Ahsoka doesn't happen like maybe a year, maybe a couple of years after this.
No, because Luke and Leia are 10.
Yeah, but
Ezra's at least 16 or 17, and he's the same age as them.
He's around the same age.
He's exactly the same age as them.
I was just reading this on Twitter.
Born on Empire Day. Empire Day is like the day that the Empire celebrates the fall of the Jedi.
It's the next day then, because that's when Padme gives birth, which is the next day.
Okay.
So
he's like this.
It's around the same. They're close enough.
Age. Yeah.
It's close enough. So it's like whatever. It's like 5 years.
Anywhere between 5 and 7 years.
So it's not either way. It's not that long apart. Although I feel like when I'm thinking about Rebels and there's that brief scene with Ezra visiting Obi-Wan on Tatooine, we see him looking out at Luke, and we just only see a silhouette.
Right.
But that silhouette does not look like a 16-year-old, if I may. Do you
think Ezra's older?
Well, it feels like Ezra's much more mature than what we're expected to see out of Luke, because how old is Luke? Was he 20 when Obi-Wan finally comes around?
Lives, though.
I guess that's fair. I mean, it's hard to say, but so either way, that fight scene. I mean, the fights are they're 5 years apart, but they're close enough together. I find it interesting that both Obi-Wan and Ahsoka were both able to defeat Vader in combat.
I was thinking about that, and you have
technically Ahsoka does die.
Technically, she doesn't. Yeah, right. So that's the thing. It's like, he does defeat her, right? It's just that Ezra pulls her through the veil, or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
That's the only reason she
world
survives.
Between worlds.
Yeah. So yeah, and then I think Vader's all like, "What the fuck?" after that happens. So he's just like, "Hey."
Right. Yeah. Excuse me. Right?
Yeah.
Excuse me. Hello. He's probably doing that thing that he does when Obi-Wan turns into a cloak, where he's touching the ground. He's like, "Is there a trap door here, or what's going on?" So anyway, I lost track of what I was talking about, but so we're in the fight scene. This fight sequence, this is the first half of the kind of a 2.5 part.
So good.
The saber duel.
Yeah.
So it's aggressive, it's violent. There's this moment where they're like back to back, and they're fighting with each other. They're like standing each other's back. I think it's all very cool. What stands out to me of the fight sequence is it has the feeling of some of the more bombastic stuff from the prequels.
Yeah,
with less flipping around.
Well,
right?
Yeah,
but the lightsabers are doing a lot of flipping, so that's fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And the kind of the difference in style that Vader's deploying versus Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan's he's got kind of the two-hand approach.
Right.
Feels much more original series. You got Vader kind of hacking away with one hand, just really angry all the time.
Yeah, I love his like super just like hard and kind of stiff motions, but yeah, it's interesting because it's obviously he fights different now, and Obi-Wan has to kind of get used to, or is getting used to, I guess now, this different fighting because it's not quite the same, I think, as Anakin's.
Well, and I think
still the aggressive and the impulsive, but
he knows kind of how to play him a little bit.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Okay, so we then cut back to Reva, and she's entering the house now. So again, the fight there has started. She lights up her lightsaber. They're already in position.
Right.
And then they take turns shooting at her, which I think is super cool. Like, I don't know if Obi-Wan ever was like, hey, if a Force user comes around, here's what you got to do.
Yeah.
Here's what you got to do. You got to...
honestly, he might have, though. Like.
Oh, and there was a line earlier that was really cool where, like, Owen is like, and Ben's gone, and Beru's like, well, whose fault is that?
Yeah. I know. I love that.
You know? And it's like you drove him away by being a jerk.
Yeah, like telling him off and literally telling him to leave us alone.
Right.
Yeah.
And now we need his help, and now he's nowhere to be found. So thanks a lot for that. We'll have to do this ourselves.
Yeah.
So they are doing themselves, and they've got this kind of like strategy where they're gonna like take turns kind of like distracting her and then trying to get a shot in on her while she's like deflecting bolts from him.
Right.
And I think that's like, if you're going to take down a Jedi, that's either you're 6 of you and you're shooting all at the exact same time, or...
Like the clones?
Yeah, like the clones. Yeah. Where they just never stop shooting her.
Yeah.
It's so funny. That joke just never... Like, I just saw another kind of, like, funny reference to that, where they're like, it was Palpatine going through the clone phone book, and he's like, okay, now I'm going to call up this one, and he's like... And then he calls up Bly, and it's like, are they still shooting back there? It's like, you can't be too safe, sir. Yeah, it's funny. Anyway, so that's what's her name?
Ayla
Secura. Thank you. So she's kind of anyway. I think they're holding their own. They're kind of tossing boxes at her and stuff, and she's not happy about it, and just kind of.
She's also like severely injured.
Well, she's also doesn't seem like she's in the mood to like kill them, because she has the opportunity to murder them at multiple occasions and doesn't. I wonder why.
We can get to it later about her like total motivations behind this, but
you find them to be confusing? My girlfriend was confused by them
a little bit. I'm just like, it's unclear to me how much she actually knows. So, like, does she just know that Luke's force sensitive?
There's no way that she knows Luke is Vader's kid. There's no way to know. She doesn't know that Vader has kids.
Then, like, why would Vader care if she went and killed this force sensitive kid?
So she does
see.
Why? Okay, so we can get into this right now.
Yeah, I thought it was more like a revenge thing where she was like, you killed my friends, I'm going to kill...
Here's what I think the show is trying to say. Okay. Whether or not you agree, that's different.
Yeah.
So I think what the show is trying to say is that she failed at her opportunity to kill Vader. Now she's full of anger and rage, and when and by the way, he calls back to that last line, which I think will live on in infamy now. It's one of those like single lines of dialogue that the Grand Inquisitor says, that it's like, you know, the will to live, or the revenge does wonders for the will to live, right? Yeah, which you know gives context to of course a bunch of things in Star Wars, right? And you know, and I do got to say, you know, she is injured. She was stabbed in the stomach, right?
Right, yes.
And so the one thing the joke that I was making was like, man, Qui-Gon really got the short end of the stick on that. He was the only one who died instantly from being stabbed in the stomach.
Yeah.
You know? And the thing is that she knew Obi-Wan cared.
Yes.
She's mad, and this is about Kevin, you just mentioned it here at the same time. She only knew Obi-Wan cared. That was enough for her to kill the kid
he cared about. Because Vader says that thing to her about, like, oh, Obi-Wan was wise to like turn you against me.
Right, was wise to
use you.
To use
right,
you.
Yes.
Right.
So it's right.
And so she's mad at, she can't get to Vader anymore, so she just needs to lash out at the world. And how can she lash out? She can take away the thing that he cares about, because obviously he didn't care about her or her friends.
No.
When they were getting murdered by Anakin.
Right.
So, you know, if that hurt me, I'm gonna hurt you in the same way. That's really the motivation.
Okay, I appreciate that a lot more, because I was a little bit like, ooh, I really hope they're not trying to say that she knows who this kid is, because that's like kind of plot holy.
Right. They never say the word Skywalker.
Right.
And you know, his name is Owen
that makes
Lars.
so much more sense.
Right. So we get back to the duel, and we get this really big wide shot of them fighting in the kind of back inside the rocks. I like the wide shot. And then you get this moment where they're kind of like hitting their lightsabers against the rocks on both sides, and it reminds me of their duel in Revenge of the Sith when they're going through that hallway and they're against the wall. There's a lot of like callbacks to that scene, to that fight, obviously for obvious reasons here. And they're using the Force against each other. He tries to pull a rock down on him. And then Vader says, "Your strength has returned, but your weakness still remains," which I think is also a really cool line.
Yeah.
There's a punch to the face here.
Yeah, so dirty.
Yeah, Vader gives him a shot to the face with his metal hand.
I know. I was like, huh. It's like, I don't know. It's like not necessarily I don't know.
It's not against the rules.
It's not, but you always...
There's no rules in life and death combat.
No. You just always see them like force push or like other things, but just like a straight up punch in the face.
There is moments where it's like, it seems like they have other opportunities to use their other hand more, but never seem to.
Right. Yeah.
You know? And this is one of those rare opportunities where, oh, look, they're being a little bit more creative.
Yeah,
and I do appreciate just generally across the board, this fight has a lot of creativity in it, of using the Force more often, which is, I think, cool.
And also, I feel like, especially when it comes to Vader and like how mad he is at Obi-Wan and everything, like it's got to feel good to punch him in the face. Like when you're just using a lightsaber and you're getting blocked, right? He's like, at least he got one punch in.
Yeah. No, I think I don't think you're wrong there. I think he's probably getting a lot out of that punch. He's like, oh, that's like, good stuff.
At least you got to punch him right in the face. Fuel your rage a little bit more.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there's this leg sweep that Vader pulls with like a rock like through his legs.
Oh yeah, I like that one.
Really cool move. I just, for the record, just take a break here before we get into this kind of this last little bit, which is that I think this duel's awesome.
Yeah,
I really like. I know that from a visual standpoint, it's not as clear as the duel of heroes from Revenge of the Sith. It's darker. It's shot in a much more kind of like handheld. And this is something I noticed in the first episode of the series and carries through all the way to the end, is this use of handheld photography and shaky cam.
Right,
and it doesn't feel like it fits Star Wars to me. It makes it harder to see, and you have to wonder if they're using it to try to hide some of the set and stuff like that to make it feel a little bit more visceral.
Yeah.
I don't think it does that. I think I would prefer a cleaner, more cleanly shot version of this duel, I think. But
from someone who I definitely hate handheld, really shaky stuff. I told you, I'm like, the only movie I've ever walked out of was Cloverfield because I hated it so much. But it doesn't bug me, and I'm pretty sensitive to that kind of stuff. So I know you notice it more because you're very, again, we've talked about how you're good at camera, the way that they use cameras and how they shoot things. But yeah, to me, it doesn't bug me, but I get what you're saying, where they might be using it as a little bit of a crutch to kind of maybe hide some of the...
Well, it's just an artistic choice, and I just don't necessarily agree with it.
I do like that this encounter was dark, though. I like that it's very opposite.
Well,
kind of like it's just different.
It's certainly better than the episode 2 encounter. I'll put that. I'll just put that out there.
Yeah, and I just mean I like it. I like that it's different than the episode 3 one. Like we don't want to see another.
Yeah, no, we don't need that. And we want to see that they've grown.
Episode 3 as in the movie.
Yes, which is the problem with how they name these episodes. It's like
well,
part
these aren't
3
episodes,
and right.
No,
it's like chapters, parts.
Yeah.
And it's like it makes it confusing. So maybe we'll just try to use the names more often.
Yeah.
But I mean the fact of the matter is no, we don't want to see that again. We want to see them grow and change and like how does that affect their encounter? And I think we get to see that here.
I like seeing them throw rocks at each other. I
thought it was very cool.
Pretty awesome.
Right, and then we get this this anime move where he uses the Force to cause an earthquake.
Man, so cool.
Do you like that? I didn't love it as much.
I loved it. I like when they just throw something really cool that Vader can do. I just like seeing how powerful he is and seeing these crazy moves that he do. And I hope that Galaxy of Heroes puts that in as one of his moves.
Well, I'm sure they will. Area of effect attack, right?
It'd be cool.
It just feels like it's, to me, the reason it is cool in and of itself, in a vacuum, it's cool. In this fight, it's cool.
Yeah.
But to me, that is such a, I've seen that move done so many times in different media.
I guess so. I don't watch as much anime stuff. So.
And it's not just anime, but it's every everything, superheroes, the supervillain, everything has a version of someone causing an earthquake by like touching the ground, and like it just like
I'm laughing at Kevin's most recent comment in the chat. P.S. Love that so many people are in the chat tonight. It's great.
Yeah, no, this is great. So when we get these finales, I like when we get a little crowd, a little community get together. It feels like it's good stuff. Okay, so
listen, stop hating on anime,
Marcos,
Julian.
I'm not hating on anime. I'm just saying that move in and of itself is cliche. It's
not cliche.
It 100% is. It is. But we'll agree to disagree on
cliche. I thought it was cool. I was like,
oh
man,
good one.
Like, that's awesome. I thought it was sick.
Okay, fair enough. And like I said, I said off before I even got to that because I wanted to say it before I got to that point. I thought the duel was awesome.
Okay, good.
So all right. So he falls into this pit. And, of course, the line that I was hoping that he would say is, like, now who has the high ground, Obi-Wan?
Right.
Yeah. Which he didn't say, but we were all thinking it.
Right.
And we even get this, like, shot from below of him standing with his arms on his hips. And he's like, ha, I got you now, right? I have you now, right?
Yeah.
And so he piles rocks on top of him really angrily. And literally, like, so forcefully, and he's just like, so it just feels like he's like, I finally did it. Is this it?
He throws that last one on top too. Is just like, yeah. I mean, obviously we know Obi-Wan's not dead, but
right. And then so we haven't got to that. There is this element of like how much drama really is there in these type of fights when there's no stakes, right? We know that neither Vader nor Obi-Wan nor Luke nor Leia. Nothing's going to happen to these people.
Okay, but you know what? I'm going to counter that with the line from episode 4, really, like, movie.
Right, which line?
4, when Vader says, like,
the
last time I saw you,
yeah.
like, you know, you were the master and I was the learner. And it's like, so we're waiting for that moment for Vader to realize he's still learning and he's not the master yet, right? So we're waiting for this, like, final showdown between the two of them where Obi-Wan kind of kicks his ass, and it's like we don't often see people kick Vader's ass.
Right.
It's just like it's not something that happens. So like that's at least kind of what I'm waiting for.
You know, that's
right?
a good point because we really never see that. It's very rare. You know, Marcos makes a point here. He says he threw an entire mountain range on him and was mad that he survived even though he knew he would. And I think that's fair. You know, for me, how does this work? He's using the Force to protect himself. To keep these rocks from landing on him. I think that's what's going on there. That's explained enough for me anyway. But this is something that was raised on another podcast I was listening to. But, you know, life and death is not the only stakes, right? No. There is other stakes.
No.
And we are here to see kind of like what motivates those lines of dialogue and that kind of stuff. And in some ways, it's kind of like, it's a little unfortunate that we're kind of like we need some sort of justification for some one line of dialogue in a future movie or, you know, a movie from 1977, you know, to quote unquote justify all this stuff. I think the show does enough with character to justify its own existence.
Yeah.
That it doesn't necessarily need to have life and death stakes to make it interesting. So in a moment like this, it's like, let's just see, because with all due respect to Revenge of the Sith, we love that fight scene too. We in that sequence, we also know that neither of them die.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So but it's what's great about that sequence is seeing how Obi-Wan's reacting to Anakin and vice versa, right?
Right.
So they did what they could in a show that, you know, we want an Obi-Wan show. How do you tell this story? I think they justify it well enough.
Yeah.
So it's like, I understand that complaint, and, you know, it's just, it kind of comes with the territory. It just, any prequel of this type is going to have that same baggage.
Exactly.
You just have to find new ways to create stakes and new ways for things to be interesting. And I think, generally speaking, not always, not the whole time, I think especially last week it suffered from feeling like, well, what's the point of this?
Right.
But this week it doesn't, because it's character driven, it's character motivated, and that's what makes it work, in my opinion. You know, Kevin makes another point here. He says, no jokes. That is the problem with the show, and they did a good job dealing with it. I mean, it is what it is, right? So
and I just mean, like, even throughout all of Star Wars, like, how often do they really kill off like your main characters? Like, not super often. Like, yeah, Episode 3 kills all of the Jedi, but
well, right,
know,
yeah, but
I
mean,
lose,
to be fair, none of those characters are the main characters of those stories.
And it's like, yeah, we lose Han later on and stuff, but it's like, I don't think we need to be upset about them not killing off.
Well, because you can't.
Yeah, it's.
In this scenario.
I mean, yeah, we knew it wasn't going to happen.
They killed Tala earlier in the last episode, and I think that does. I think that has some weight.
Yeah,
it certainly it provides the opportunity for Obi-Wan to give Leia her holster, and that works. I mean, of course, she could have just given it to her too.
Well, there's always just these little things that I think like we're saying, and like Kevin said, they're doing a really good job here.
Right.
So
Vader's final line is, did you truly think you could defeat me? You have failed, Master. Right? So this is that line where it's like, where he feels like he has taken over that title. He calls him Master, but it's with disdain. It's this idea that, you were my master, but you really think you could beat me. Right? And then he walks away. Which is his cliche move, which is like, I will trust that this will go the way I planned.
It's my favorite thing about this, like, this era of Vader is him just, like, assuming everyone's dead or just, like, not caring enough to actually check.
Yeah.
I mean, he's kind of doing the same thing that Obi-Wan did to him on Mustafar, is just, like, walking away.
Well, right, and, there's two things there. People said at that time, man, if he had just killed him then, could have saved a whole lifetime of pain, right? Right? But and same thing in this episode, right? You can imagine a scenario where he's defeated essentially, Vader, and he chooses mercy. Yeah. And that is the lesson of the show, people.
Right.
The show, it's not that, it's like, of course things could have played out differently if Anakin had been murdered by Obi-Wan in Revenge of the Sith.
We wouldn't have any other movie.
But like, exactly. So it's like of course, right? But the lesson is, and this is what Obi-Wan, they kind of spell it out in plain English in part 5, which is that, taking life is not the Jedi way.
No.
Right? And then even later in this episode, Obi-Wan mentions, like, by choosing mercy, you honored those who have fallen before you.
Right.
And that's what the show is trying to say here. So I think
you
got to take the show on its own merits, and that's what that's what it's trying to say, and I think it's effective in that
absolutely
that message.
Yeah, honestly, it's
So that's my rant. So Tatooine, we got Reva. She's facing off with Owen. They have this little bridge thing. I always thought the more we spend time in the Lars household, the more I think it's the coolest place.
Oh yeah.
Other than it's like sandy floor that it has. Other than the sandy floor, I love that it's got this little hut igloo at the top, and you're like, okay, you walk in through the igloo, and then you go into this tunnel system.
Yeah.
And there's this open air pit, and it never rains, so that's not an issue.
Right, yeah.
And
it's like a courtyard.
Yeah. And then they've got these crisscrossy bridges, and of course, no hand railings, because that's not the Star Wars way.
It definitely not.
And so he's facing off with her, and I think he handles himself as well as I think anyone could in that scenario.
Yeah. Man, how dangerous would those walkways be for a baby and a toddler? You're raising Luke up.
Well, okay, one of the things that you mentioned here is that, how much does she know? She says that, says you must love him like he's your own. So it implies that she knows that he's adopted.
Yes.
Right? But I guess maybe she knows that, but not anything else.
She probably just knows that he's maybe a force-sensitive kid, or maybe Owen's protecting him, or he's he could be part of the whole smuggling, not smuggling, but the path, that kind of thing. It's something like that.
But either way, that line is there just so that he can say he is my own, which is a very cool line. And again, giving Owen more character, more depth. This is a person that comes off as a bit of a jerk in episode 4 and dies almost immediately. Right? We just don't really think of him that much. Luke almost never mentions his parents. Right? And here he is kind of defending him with his life, and I think it adds a lot of character to this and depth to the series. It certainly gives that moment where he arrives home and their burnt skeletons are on the ground a lot more weight. So he gets a hit in with that like farmer's tool thing.
Yeah.
And of course, then he tries to block a lightsaber with it. That doesn't go very well.
No, she cuts right through it. But I like when he just like punches her in the gut because he knows she's injured too. But...
Sorry, Kevin with the jokes left and right today. He's at HGTV Star Wars. I mean, yes. I mean, like honestly, I would. There is
he will save the galaxy, so no handrail, like no baby proofing in Star Wars.
Right, exactly. I like the. Actually, I don't really like it. There's in Star Wars. There's this on Disney Plus. There's this like Star Wars landscapes.
Oh, I don't mind putting that on in the background when I'm just like reading.
I don't think it looks. First of all, I don't think it looks very good. Like it could
look better, but it's
and
not,
it's like it's just like it's not that great. It's fine.
I feel like to me it's just like a computer background,
right?
just,
which
like,
is
going.
Why does it even exist? I don't. But another question.
Meant to just like sit there and like watch it as like a TV show.
I did when it first came out. Like what else are you supposed to do anyway? And there's the ships one too, which is just arguably worse. But I would 100% watch Star Wars HGTV because it's like show me more of Leia's palace on Alderaan. I want to see more. I want to see the full schematics of the Lars homestead. I want to explore the sleeping quarters of the Millennium Falcon,
like going like all the way through like a Star Destroyer and seeing like all the
right,
different
exactly.
Things and,
yes, that's what I want.
Yeah.
So yes, Kevin, thank you for inspiring that.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, so she kind of deals with Owen, knocks him off the platform. He hurts his leg. He has a limp in the episode 4, so I guess this is how he gets his limp.
Well, she does. It looks like she breaks it or something.
Yeah,
like
he's not doing well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so he tries to buy a few more seconds for Beru when she enters that room and he's climbing up the ladder. Luke runs into the desert at night. I really love the shot of her screaming in rage, Reva screaming in rage as she's like, chasing him down and like running after him. I think that's very good. Yeah. I think that Moses Ingram does some very great work here in terms of acting.
She's great. I'm really enjoying her acting and her character.
And then we are back to Obi-Wan, and he's under the rocks, and we're hearing some flashbacks in dialogue. So here's what we got, okay? I wrote them all down. This is the end for you, my master. This is, of course, from before the fight in episode 3.
Mm-hmm.
Admit you are beaten. This is from the flashback from last week. This is all Anakin. You cannot win, Obi-Wan. That's from part 2 of this series. I see through the lies of the Jedi. That's also from Revenge of the Sith. You were my enemy, which
I know you hate.
I just one. like guys, we don't have to keep using that one. That's a bad line. We don't have to keep using it, right?
Yeah, why don't they just use like "I hate you"?
Yeah, right. Which is so visceral, right?
Yeah.
You should have killed me when you had the chance, which is another funny. They use those both back to back. Both not great lines in my opinion. Although again, is what we were just talking about. You should have killed me when you had the chance. That I think there is an element of truth to that Anakin has. Vader might not want to admit it. It's kind of like a Freudian slip maybe in some ways, where it's like he's now in this life of anger and pain. It's like you could have ended this all. But this doesn't have to be this way. You just killed me.
Yes, like there's those. Yeah, exactly. It definitely has that double meaning, whether he knows it or not.
I do not fear the dark side. It's also from Revenge of the Sith.
Right.
And I am what you made me, which is a cool line, and that's from part 2 of this series. So
I do really like that line. It's
Yes, this is good stuff. This is again one of those opportunities where I feel like they could have put in some deeper cut references. So of course in episode 9, which is the worst Star Wars movie, but it's not even close. Like I'm like it's just so bad. But in episode 9, when Rey is hearing the voices of all the Jedi, right? They do some deep cut stuff. I think there is the voice of help me out here. What are some of the deep cut ones there? Because I know Mace is in there.
Mace is in there. Kanan is in there.
I think Kanan, exactly. The Kanan is in there.
Yoda.
Right. Obi-Wan, I'm sure.
I thought even is it? I don't know whether it's Ayla Sakura or
like one of the other like Kiadamundi or something
maybe,
like that.
Yeah.
And so like they did some deep cut references there.
I think it's Ayla Sakura,
here would have been really cool is if we could have had some sort of like re-recorded dialogue of Clone Wars dialogue or something like that. Yeah. That's like, hey, if you want to know where that's from, you can go back and watch that episode if you want to, right? That's you could seed those things in there because it's like by including Kanan in episode 9, it's like, look, he is a Jedi. You know, you can, that kind of gives a little bit more merit to him as a character. And then, of course, in this scenario here as well, it's like you could have kind of seeded those in as an opportunity to introduce people to the animation, which I know has a little bit of a more difficult barrier to entry.
Right. Yeah.
Any of these? What's your favorite of these lines here?
Ooh, it's hard. I honestly like, obviously the "I am what you made me" for sure. It's a lot of even the ones from the show, which is probably a good thing, but it's just I like it all. Like it has that really good. What I like about this scene as a whole is I feel like Obi-Wan's almost kind of struggling when he's thinking about that, like, Anakin side of things, when all of this is going through his mind. But then when we flip and he gets the other flashbacks, like, then he gains that strength. So he's getting more of his strength from, like, thinking about the future and thinking about Luke and Leia, as opposed to thinking about all the, like, the past and all the bad stuff that's happened. Yes. So it's like that same difference between the Sith and the Jedi, where it's like, you know, you got to focus on the light and the good things, not the darkness.
Well, and I love what I love about this too, and I think what the show actually does a really good job of at the very end here, when he's talking with Leia. But he's protecting Anakin's kids.
Yeah,
and it's like I think that's forgotten a lot of the time. It's like, it's Luke and Leia. It's Luke and Leia. We always think about Luke and Leia. They are Anakin's kids.
Well, they're Vader's kids,
right? But he doesn't know they don't know. Vader doesn't know they're real. He doesn't know they exist. Yeah. Right? He's been lied to by the Emperor. He's still very much under Emperor's thumb at this point, as we see later in the series, but in this episode even. But there is this kind of wholesomeness that we get as Obi-Wan has these flashes of Luke and Leia, where it's like he's like he can preserve his memory of the things that made Anakin who he was, in the future. They're his children,
exactly,
and so there is something really like special there.
No, I don't know. I really like the scene where it feels like he's being kind of like crushed by the weight of these rocks and the weight of, like, everything that's happened in the past. But then it's like he's able to
lift it all away.
Yeah. When
through with the Force,
through
right?
the Force, and thinking about, you know, the kids. It's
this
great.
is, I mean, this is the moment essentially that he goes from being old grouchy, or like kind of sad Obi-Wan into Obi-Wan. The Obi-Wan we know.
Yeah, this is like General Kenobi again.
Well,
now.
I mean, I don't even know. It's different. This is
I know.
He's evolved. This is Obi-Wan who can speak to Qui-Gon. This is Obi-Wan who can appear as a Force ghost
in his final form.
Yeah, that's right. And so he tries to sneak up on Vader. I do like that. And he tries to sneak up on Vader. The duel resumes. We get this really cool saber flip moment, like where they're flipping it around. It's dumb but fun.
Love it.
And we get the force stop of the sabers, all that kind of stuff.
Still love that.
And then we get the God mode. I think I'm stealing that from the Screen Rant recap, but the God mode rock barrage that Obi-Wan throws at. And this is like the turning point in the fight, right?
It's so good. Like, everything about it is so good. Like, Vader crushes him with rocks, and then Obi-Wan just goes full, like, he's just wailing on him, and it's just cool to see Vader get, like, actually beat. Like,
100%. Kevin, great point here in the chat. You have regained your strength, the Force. You still have your weakness. You care about other people, and of course, Obi-Wan's strength is through loving other people.
Of course, that's where like the Force kind of goes through him better in that way, right? So
it's a great point.
Yeah.
And something I think these are layers that will be peeled back over time as the show is examined in context with the larger series.
There's
over time.
A funny note about like when Obi-Wan's like throwing the rocks, because I played Vader Immortal. It's like a VR game.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And he throws a bunch of rocks at you at some point when you're like
block them with your lightsaber.
I can't remember whether you block them with a lightsaber or whether I think you have to try and block them and like with your hand and catch them and throw them, like toss them aside, but it's actually really hard. I got hit with so many rocks. I'm also just really bad at VR games.
Well,
but I don't know. I just love seeing Obi-Wan just beat the shit out of Vader with just throwing relentless rocks at him. Yeah.
And so back to Tatooine, and Reva follows Luke to a rocky outcropping, similar to what we're seeing here. Reva's following Luke to as he's kind of like climbing up this. I think we're supposed to believe that it's if it's not the same canyon we see later in the episode, it's very similar to it.
Oh, okay.
And anyways, he's climbing up around. What I love about this moment, though, is the music. So the music kicks in here, and it's this like choral music that sounds like Lord of the Rings to me.
Okay.
And it's like as she's kind of seething in rage, and we see Luke, and she's looking around. We see kind of Luke in the background, kind of like climbing up around, and she can't see him yet. It reminds me of like moments from Lord of the Rings where you have Gollum climbing around in the background and stuff. It's cool to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I think it's really dope, and I think the music works. And then we cut right back. It's this really quick cut back to the duel, and how Vader and Obi-Wan are holding hands, and they literally are holding hands.
Yeah.
and Ben's using like rocks to weaken Vader, and he's kind of getting hits in on the respirator, which of course is his weak spot. There's some really big force pushes, like a huge one that like sends Vader like flying like across the screen. It's great. Again, really just giving some like really visceral elements to this fight.
I like even especially as he like hits the respirator, you're getting a little less of the James Earl Jones. You're getting a little bit more of Hayden Christensen, even in the breath sounds. But I like that like slow fade that they do to that.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, that comes full circle right here. So he does this. He gets a couple hits in. Obi-Wan does on Vader, and then a slash on the back, followed by this big lunge move that hits Vader in the head. Now, what the recap, the Screen Crush recap mentioned was that this gives him the scar on his head that he has in the original series.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I mean, that might be true, or it's just they're updating. Who knows what happened between now and at that point. But if that's true, that's also cool.
Yeah.
And you get the ripped open mask. Now, answering Marcos's question from the beginning of the show, is this the same side?
No, it's the opposite side.
It's the opposite side, which is very cool.
It's cool. It's so cool. Yeah, I love it. I like seeing it in live action. It was cool in Rebels. It's 10 times
so
cooler
again,
in
here's
live action.
Here's the big question for me in this scenario. Okay. It is cool that we get this again.
Yeah.
Is it too similar to the fight with Ahsoka?
I don't think so. Honestly, here's the thing. Not everybody has watched Rebels. We all know that. So to me, it doesn't like sully the Ahsoka fight, and it doesn't take anything away from this one. It's just like they needed... I honestly think they really needed to have the like Anakin portion of this.
I agree,
really important,
100%,
and that's the only way to do it, other than like knocking his helmet clean off, maybe.
Right, but then he can't breathe at all, or something.
Yeah, like so, it's just kind of. I like it. I have no qualms with them doing this again. Like it's not.
No, and when you mention that, I think. Doing how he when he takes his helmet off, let me look upon you with my own eyes.
Yeah.
And he like takes it off, and then he's got the little breather like on his chin.
Yeah, like he has it still on his
wouldn't
mouth,
if I could change the show. If I had a note, I do like there's a kind of a really cool visual of Vader on one side and Anakin on the other. Yeah. I understand that, but if like just in the kind of the spirit of let's not do the exact same thing we did before.
Right.
Take off the top half of the helmet, right? Have him, both his eyes, and the breather's still there, right? The bottom of it. And then have, you can get away with a lot of that same stuff. Yeah. You could even get more of Anakin's face in there. So, and
I'm
of
sure
course
they probably discussed this in a room of like,
I'm sure
what works best, what makes more sense for people are going to be like, that would kill him, and that wouldn't. So, it's, but
right. Like
it doesn't bug me, but yeah.
It doesn't bother me because, again, the execution of it is great.
Yes.
The symbolism is good, right? And it all works from a story standpoint, so it doesn't bother me. It does irk me a little bit that it's just like
it is quite similar,
right? And it's like it's cool that it's opposite sides. So it's like okay, you got like his former master takes off his helmet on one side, and then his Padawan takes it off on the other. So there's some kind of symmetry there.
Same like reaction when that mask is open and they see his eyes, and it's just like it's just different.
What's
crazy? Hear his voice again, right?
Yes.
So it's
and of course the first time this happens, or what not technically the first time. It's later in this timeline, but in Rebels when it happens, you have Matt Lanter's voice.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's very, as much as I like Matt Lanter and I like Hayden Christensen, their voices are very different in my opinion.
They are different, yeah.
Very
like Clone,
different.
Or sorry, like Clone Wars Anakin is different, but I'll be honest, like Clone Wars Anakin makes me like Anakin's character a little bit more.
Right, and there was a guy in one of the podcasts I was listening to about this, and one of the guys was saying that like he felt, and of course everyone cheered when Hayden said, "I watched all the shit, like I watched all the animated stuff, so I can understand the character better." And everyone's like, "Woo!" And then when that guy was like, Rupert Friend was like, "I didn't watch any of Rebels, screw that," and everyone's like, "Boo, lame." And so everyone's like super excited about that, and like one of the people I was listening to, smart Star Wars guy, and he was saying that like he felt like his cadence of speaking in the flashback last week was more similar to the Clone Wars version. I don't know if that's true. I haven't felt like that's true. I think you have to really get in deep and analyze that. I don't have the ear for that necessarily, but if that's true, that is cool.
I just found like his cadence just better. It was like it was just
his
better.
acting is better.
His acting was better. Well, and it's like the lines are better, and it's just
that's
it's
true.
a lot of it. Again, we've always said we need to give Hayden Christensen a little bit more.
Well, I think you said that.
Well, I don't think it's his fault. Like, and I think it's when you get lines that are "I hate sand," it's like, how are you
right? Like, listen. I agree.
Love scenes are bad.
I 100% agree. I 100% agree that those love scenes are terrible. I also agree that the dialogue is pretty brutal in a lot of parts of the prequels. My stance, and I will repeat it here again for the record, is despite those things, Ewan McGregor certainly elevated his dialogue.
No, I know. That's true.
Ian McDiarmid certainly elevated his dialogue. Samuel Jackson certainly elevated his dialogue.
I know.
You know, the sore thumb there is that despite the bad dialogue, Hayden Christensen was not able to, or it wasn't given the right coaching for whatever reason. The performance wasn't there. So this moment, when we're talking about him with his mask off, this is the best acting that I've seen Hayden Christensen do. It's not even close. It's like and of course he has the benefit of like being able to really feel like the character with the makeup and all that kind of stuff, and the costume and all that stuff. I think that certainly helps. But you know, so the mask comes off and you have Obi-Wan say Anakin, again, echoing the scene with Ahsoka. You get this lighting that they're using with their lightsabers, which is why I think they lit this in darkness, which is so they could use this lighting trick or this kind of storytelling trick with the lightsabers, and I appreciate it. So they've got Obi-Wan with his blue, and you have Anakin with his red saber here. And when the mask comes off, there's this kind of purplish hue because there's a lot of blue in there. Right?
Yeah.
And so you have this line where he says, Anakin is gone, I am what remains. And again, if we're just talking about like pure acting, capital A, right? Both Hayden and Ewan are putting in very good performances here. Ewan, again, just unbelievably good here. Just really absolutely nails this kind of like, I don't know how to describe it necessarily. I want to say like there's this idea of self-pity, like he feels responsible for he's looking at in front of him, right? And there is this so he says, I'm sorry for it all, right?
I know.
And he's crying.
You can like see the pain in his face.
Yeah, he just like, I let you down, which is what he says in the original in episode 3. He's like, I failed you, Anakin.
Yeah.
I failed you.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm so sorry. I'm like, it's my fault, is really what he's saying.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then which I think this line from Anakin's Vader Hayden is so I have to imagine they spent weeks trying to figure out what this exact line of dialogue would be.
Yeah.
But it's perfect, and it's perfect in a lot of ways here. So in my opinion, he says, "I'm not your failure, Obi-Wan." So he's not responding specifically to "I'm sorry for all of it," right? He's responding to what he had said when they last fought, which is "I failed you."
Yes.
So there's a direct callback to that. And there's this connection. It draws a direct line to that moment. Right. So I love that. And then you didn't kill Anakin Skywalker, which in a literal sense is true because you left him there on the beaches of Mustafar.
Yeah. Beaches.
Yeah, I mean, it's not you don't go there for sun tanning, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So and the riverbanks of Mustafar, and so you didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I did, and he's obviously this is a sentiment that has been driven home across all types of media since the original trilogy, which is this idea that Vader sees himself as a completely different person from Anakin.
Right, like they're not even.
It's this like almost schizophrenic type of, or you know, I think I don't know what there's a new word for it, and I'm using it wrong.
You're talking about like dissociative identity.
Yes,
disorder?
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
There's this almost element of that. It's not really what's happening here.
Different. He's separating himself. It's like a completely new identity. It's a completely new, like
he's left that behind. There's this kind of this. I also think of Episode 8, my favorite Star Wars movie. When I say, the line from Kylo is, "Let the past die, kill it if you have to," and this is something that Anakin takes literally in obviously before Kylo said any of that stuff, obviously because that's his grandson. Mm-hmm. But it's he literally killed his former self in kind of the most literal sense you could possibly have, right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously not entirely, because it feels like, and it always has felt this way to me, because Anakin was always so petulant and annoying, was that like he's trying to convince himself that's the case. It's not. Absolutely. It's because again, obviously, Anakin or Luke is the one who's finally able to reach him and say, I there's still good in him, all that kind of stuff. And by the way, there's the line here where he says, I did, and then he said, the same way I'll destroy you, which is what Anakin says here. And then what Obi-Wan says, then my friend is truly dead, is what he says. Which the line from Episode 6 is when Vader and Luke are on they're on that like little platform before they go up to see the Emperor.
Yes.
He says something about how, I don't remember the exact line of dialogue, but what Luke says is, then my father is truly dead.
Yeah.
If that, or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
So there's a callback there. That's another one to that moment.
I feel like, there's so much with this one line that I really like. So it's I don't know, well done on just the creators of the show, but
chef's kiss.
They're doing so much with this line, because they're, by Vader saying this, or Anakin, saying this to Obi-Wan, he's almost like, probably not like he means to, but he's giving Obi-Wan...
He's absolving him.
Yeah, he's absolving him of it. Mm-hmm. So he's letting Obi-Wan like let go of that and realize it's not him. While at the same time, it's like, it just makes so much sense why then Obi-Wan later tells Luke that, he's more machine than man now. That Vader killed his father. Right. Because, he heard it came straight from Anakin.
So this is one of those things that bugs me a little bit.
Really? That bugs you?
Yeah, because it's like, that line has always been one of those things where it's like, oh, that's like, I can't believe he lied to him or whatever. Mm-hmm. And, and they address it in the second movie in Empire Strikes Back, and he says, well, it's true from a certain point of view.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Where it's like, okay, whatever you say, Obi-Wan. Like, but, and like, the fact of the matter is, the first Star Wars was made. Yes. And they made some choices, and then they're like, oh, oops, we got to make some changes because we have a bigger story in mind, right?
Yeah.
And so they've gone through hoops for 30 years trying to address these certain things. You could just leave it at, he told Luke a white lie, right? He told Luke what he had to tell him at the time.
Yeah, to
get him to kind of start his hero's journey. So that's, you don't have to have a line like this. I mean, it does do that work at the same time. It does do that. I still like the line for a bunch of other reasons. But to take it as like, oh, well, it explains why Obi-Wan later said.
I don't think that's what it's for. I think this is more for like kind of that absolving of Obi-Wan and his guilt, and because he's still riddled with his guilt, these 10 years later, right? So, and I don't even like, because it's Vader, right? Vader's not trying to absolve him, but maybe Anakin deep down
that's why that's where I really like it, because I think there is an element of Anakin in there.
I think so,
right?
Too.
And it's
piece
when the helmet comes off, it's same thing happened with Ahsoka, where there's this brief moment of like realization, like he's let me look upon you with my own eyes. Yes. He looks upon Ahsoka, he looks upon
Obi-Wan, like,
with
every time he does, it's just like
there's this brief moment of honesty with himself, and he's so yes, he's saying, this line, he says, I'm not your failure, Obi-Wan. You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I did.
Right.
Is very human, a very human thing to say.
Right.
And true to his core emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next line is when his kind of like, he starts thinking about it more, and it's like, well, and then I'm going to destroy you, right? Now he's kind of getting angry again. That's that. He's kind of falling back into that, just like the same way he says to Ahsoka, then you will die.
Then you will die.
Right.
It's just like, and I like even like going back to the Rebels one, there's just that split second when the same thing happens with his helmet, that he looks away for just a second.
Right.
And then he like looks back at her, and then is just basically like, oh,
right.
And then kind of says the same thing, like, then you will die, right?
Right.
Like it's like you can see that humanity there for just that little moment, and then nope, it's just Vader takes back over. It's
only the Sith deal in absolutes.
Mm-hmm.
So what I like here again, also, I mentioned the lighting earlier, but as he says this line, then I will destroy you. The red light from his lightsaber fully takes over. The purple is gone, and then you get this line where he says, "Goodbye, Darth," which I think, so unlike what I said about the line about him lying to Luke, I like the way this plays out, because there was always a little bit of weirdness to me by the way Obi-Wan talks to Vader in Episode 4.
Right.
Yeah. He said, it's like, when you last left me, I was but the learner, and now I am the master. Yeah. He says, only the master of evil, Darth.
Yeah.
Right. And Darth was always just like, Darth. It's like, is that his first? It's like, it's talking like it's his first name.
Yeah.
It's like, it's weird, right? Like Mr.
Like
Vader.
Just like that slight, like it's that, not like that Obi-Wan is trying to give a slight, but it's just like, okay, Darth, like, well, no, you're a Sith Lord now. Like, I guess,
what lands here is it's the same thing we talked about earlier. He feels absolved to some degree. He's able to accept that Anakin's made these choices on his own, right? And if that's the choice you want to go down, then I accept that that's who you believe you are, right? And I will think of you in that way. You are Darth Vader then to me from now, not Anakin, right? And that allows him to kind of create a wall up, I think, in his brain.
I just like that he says Darth, but not Vader. Like everybody else calls him Vader,
right?
And he just goes with Darth because that's just like, it's still like, it's like one more level of like taking away that like the personification of him, right?
The fear of him.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, like you're just a Sith at this point. You're not You're not someone that I know anymore. So it's like I'm not even gonna use your like made up name that Palpatine gave you. It's just like you're just Darth then.
It's like, you just come up with that just now? It's so cool.
Yeah. Vader.
So then you get Vader screaming Obi-Wan, which also reminds me of Episode 3. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Right,
it's
I hate you.
Of course, yeah.
So, that's the juicy bit here, obviously. And we get to see then Ben leaving the planet. We cross-cut again. Luke is getting pushed off a ledge by Reva. Ben senses he's in danger, right? Jumps to hyperspace. Luke is unconscious. She lights her lightsaber up. This is Reva's chance to kill him, right? There's nothing stopping him, right? There was a moment I was like, wait, are they gonna like do that thing where you have what you thought was happening simultaneously isn't, and Obi-Wan's gonna show up. It's like, oh no, that happened 10 minutes ago, and now it actually lines up so he's able to get there in time. No, which I actually appreciate. Like, that's good. That would have been lame. Yeah, so I'm glad that didn't happen.
Too convenient. Yeah.
So instead, we get what is ultimately much more interesting, is a battle of self-conflict.
Yeah.
So she approaches him, lights up her lightsaber. Instead of seeing a young Luke, she sees a young version of herself.
Right.
And sees flashbacks to Vader killing her or trying to kill her and her friends. She lifts up her lightsaber. We cut back to Ben landing. We don't know what happens here, but she's she's like, there's these flashbacks. She's clearly having second thoughts. We cut back to Ben. He's landing. Yeah. He got there super fast. I guess they weren't very far away.
As you would hope, she's gonna have these like flashbacks and these like second thoughts. It's like, I don't think everybody who is a Sith or who is Darkseid can just kill an unconscious kid. Like,
yeah, no, that's true.
I'm sure a lot of them can, but it's like from what she comes from, I appreciate this a little bit of a turn that they gave her.
Again, this is much more interesting than just some another dark lights or red lightsaber baddie. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and that's true. I know I did say earlier in one of our earlier episodes that like sometimes I just want like villains to be villains and not have this like character turnaround. But
I mean, that's what we get out of Vader here, right?
Yeah, and I can appreciate it with her having this turnaround because it makes more sense, like coming from her background. And it's like, yeah, like she's not just gonna. She was full of all this pain and like hate and that kind of stuff, and she's getting over it. So
yeah, I mean, it reminds me there's a bit of what's his name from Rebels again? With the chops.
Callus.
Callus, right?
Yeah.
Who has second thoughts?
Yeah.
Obviously, this is different because we're dealing with a former Jedi here.
Yeah.
You could make the same argument about the Grand Inquisitor, who's also a former Jedi to some degree.
Yeah.
And there is no redemption there. But it's fine. Not every bad guy has to be redeemed, and not every good guy has to survive, right? So,
no, exactly.
So this is fine. And again, I find it to be much more interesting. It leaves the door open for where it can go next. And so again, like I said, we get Ben landing. Owen and Brew are calling out for Luke. Ben's like jumps into action. He's like, "I'll search the dune sea. We'll find it. We look until we find them." And then Reva appears out of the darkness. She's carrying Luke.
Mm-hmm.
What struck me here is that moment of like there can be no drama here, right?
Right,
because
like we know, but
exactly.
they don't know.
Yeah, and I understand that. So you kind of have to like put yourselves in their shoes and be like, oh, they must be terrified.
Yeah.
Right? But at the same time, it's like this show spends a lot of time like lingering on that stuff, and it's like the more interesting piece is when he starts talking to Reva.
Right.
It's not interesting seeing. We know Luke survived, so anyway, she places him at their feet. He's alive. No surprise there. His parents rush to his side. They take him. There's this one last little look from Owen, and then he leaves. And then we get Reva crying on her knees. And again, great performances here. Lots of crying in this episode. And including from me.
So many I
was a little critical of the show early because I didn't feel like it was connecting with me emotionally. After episode 2, 3, 4, and 5 did not. It was a desert out there.
I've had quite a few like little moments that got me throughout the series, but
yeah, I mean, I was even in my rewatch, this stuff got me. So this is when the waterworks really started turning on for me. And so Reva's crying. She's like, couldn't do it. I failed them. He killed them all, and I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And so I think at first I was like, I find that very interesting. The dialogue is very interesting, right? She's saying she couldn't do it. She couldn't kill Luke,
right?
Like Vader was able to kill the other younglings, right? And she feels like and I guess that comes back to kind of your confusion around the motivations here. Which
it was that line that kind of got me, where I was like, "Whoa! Like, was this kind of a revenge thing, like directed at Vader?" But I get that Vader wouldn't have known.
I think it's more about her.
Yeah, no, I think
internally,
it's very right. It's internally.
So she's saying, "I failed them." Like her friends.
Yes.
That by not being able to be strong enough to do the thing that Vader did, she failed them.
Right.
And that he was strong enough to do it, and that means that I'm not strong enough to beat him.
Right. Yes.
And then I love this line from Obi-Wan, which is like, you haven't failed them by showing mercy. You have given them peace. You have honored them. When we talked about that earlier, how well that works, I think, and really speaks to the show's message. So, and then the last line here, which I think is even better, which is, have I become him? Right, which is this fear, that this brief moment that I think sometimes is often played as for cliche in a lot of different movies and that kind of thing, which is this idea that, if you do this, you're just as you are just as bad as they are,
right? Which
they also do in Star Wars all the time, but in this case, it's like she is grappling with that exact idea, which is like, despite not killing Luke, am I as bad as Anakin? Am I as a terrible person as he is, right? And do I have to now grapple with that?
Right.
And he's saying, no, you are not. You chose not to go down that path. there's this great line that they call to in that Screen Rant recap where they say that Yoda has this line about saying that, if you allow it, the dark side will conquer your destiny. It will take over your life if you give it the room to do so, right?
Right.
And this is what happened to her. She had this, and then has this brief moment, this choice to continue down that path, and or to not. And then she has this flashback, which is, again, so you have to get the impression that this happens to Force users all the time. They're just constantly getting flashes of stuff constantly. Right, and so she's like, there's two avenues. You can go down the path and become another Vader, or you can choose not to.
Yeah.
And she chooses not to. So I think it's really beautiful. And she says, no, you have chosen not to. Who you become now is up to you.
Right.
Now you're free. We both are.
Yeah.
Right. Speaking to how the line from Vader earlier. So anyway, what did you make of this kind of last bit with Reva?
Yeah. Like I kind of mentioned before, originally I was kind of hoping she would just stay a villain, but I don't mind what they did with her character, and I thought they did this character development really well. I honestly didn't think she was going to survive through this show. Neither did I. I really thought she was not going to make it. I assumed at some point, like, someone was going to...
Just another Force user out there now.
Yeah,
but so again, how did she survive the lightsaber to the stomach exactly?
I don't know.
Unclear to me.
I mean, but at the same, well, maybe like I said, maybe she's got some metal in there from last time.
Right. She's not Tatooine now. She could stop by that same junk shop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then it's curious now. So it's like, are we going to see more from this character, or in other media?
I think you don't leave her alive if you don't. She's a good actress. She's hardly like a A-lister like Ewan McGregor, so it's like you can get her back for stuff.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, you never know after this, but it's just nice. I don't know. It's nice having another like character like this that's kind of gone through.
This is much more interesting than another Padawan that survived Order 66.
Yeah, exactly. It's very different.
That is what she is also. But
she is, but she's had a different arc, and yes. I like that this is a much different arc, and then she's still going to have this like battling back and forth, and
what happens
now she's probably going to be hunted, right?
Let's cut forward, jump forward 10 years. How, is she, does she join the rebellion? Is she kind of doing things on her own terms? Is she kind of living as a hermit? There's so many things that you could, or places you could take it.
Yeah.
You could leave it open-ended and we'll never know.
Well,
that's just not really what Star Wars does, so we'll probably find out what happens.
There's just so many people who either like leave and join the rebellion and do something great, or it's like some of them are like, I don't want to be part of this at all anymore. Like, I just want to go live a normal life, kind of like Cut.
Right. Yeah. But even like with Cut, it's like we didn't have to revisit Cut in the Bad Batch, but we do. This is why I imagine we'll see her again.
Yeah, it's just so it's it'll be interesting, and I wouldn't be upset to see her again. So it's maybe we'll see her in Haja.
Yeah,
team up.
Yeah, that's a spin-off.
a little duo. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
Not a spin-off, but maybe we'll see them in something else.
Yeah.
Into trouble.
I'm sure we will.
Yeah.
So now we cut to Mustafar, and we're kind of now at the prologue of this, I think, to some degree. So we're at Vader's castle, and this is just really cool to me. I've been waiting to see the Emperor this whole time. And we have Vader. He's talking to someone, but you're not sure who at first. And he says, the probes are tracking every system in the range. He sounds very angry. We will destroy everything in our path until he is found. Right? And then we see the camera spins around. We see he's talking to the Emperor. Ian McDermott's back here doing literally the best work. Like every time he's the Emperor, like his line delivery is pitch perfect. Like the way he says Vader, the way he says, what's the line here? I wonder if your thoughts are clear on this, which is also a callback to episode 6, where he says that to Vader at that time as well. Yeah. So they're like very awesome, right? So we have the Emperor appearing here also, just generally is cool. So he says, "You seem agitated, my friend," which also reminds me of episode 3 when he always calls Anakin my friend.
Right.
It always feels like very manipulative.
Yes.
And so again here, it's like, "You seem agitated, my friend." He's like, "He will not evade me again." Again, I have a hard time not writing down all of his dialogue.
Oh no, this was such good dialogue. It's perfect.
"I wonder if your thoughts are clear on this, Lord Vader. Perhaps your feelings for your old master have left you weakened." Right? And then this line, which I think is the best part, is filled with this, like, it left dangling and filled with kind of this like threat. Basically.
Oh yeah, definitely.
If
a
your
threat.
past cannot be overcome, ... Kenobi means nothing. Vader says, "I serve only you, my master." So this idea is like, listen, you either figure this out, or I find another version of you.
Yeah,
is really what he's saying there.
Basically, yeah. It's like, okay, you're still fixated on it. I love it because I know it's not like this, but it just sounds like like a jealous partner where they're just like, oh, you're not over your ex.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of what it is, though.
It's not,
right?
It's kind of funny, like. But no, it's definitely that veiled threat of like, if you can't focus and if you're still just gonna go after Kenobi and basically not listen and not be my lapdog, then I have no use for you, right? So it's like, this isn't about Obi-Wan, and I like how the Emperor really doesn't let Vader, like, kind of reins him in all the time. Like, anytime Vader wants to go do something else that he wants to do, the Empire's reining him in because he doesn't want him to like go do his own stuff.
Well, because if he gets closure for these things, then what does that mean for him?
Well, exactly. Well, then there's like part of that rage is gone, and part of that, like, you know, and I'm sure the Emperor also thinks that, like, okay, maybe if he kills Obi-Wan, like, maybe that'll bring up some kind of different feeling for him. He doesn't have that hatred anymore. He's going to have maybe a bit more of a resolve or sorrow about it. So
yeah, no, I think it's great. I mean, this idea that your feelings make you weak.
Yeah.
Right. This is the implication here. It's not implied. It's literally said. But it's just I just find it all very good. I think I like the use of the term Lord Vader here. Again, I said the use of my friend. It would have been odd if the Emperor didn't appear. So I'm glad.
I wasn't expecting it, but I was like, man, that's so great.
Yeah, I'm happy. And so we got a clone in the series. We got the Emperor, Leia, Luke, Obi-Wan, obviously a bunch of stormtroopers. We got Inquisitors. What didn't we really get? I mean, no bounty hunters. I guess.
That's true. We got pretty much everything we wanted.
There was bounty hunters in episode 2, so I take that back. Yeah. Okay, so we get also in this moment we get the Imperial March in its full glory, which is very cool as he's sitting on his throne on Mustafar. Dope as fuck. And then we cut to Alderaan, which is Space Vancouver, as I like to dub it. And Leia is getting dressed like from episode 1. Her hair's up in braids. She's got her gloves that Obi-Wan got her.
Yeah.
And her holster. And she's got Lola in the holster, which is a nice little touch.
I love that, yeah.
And what I love even more is that when her mom comes in, she's like, "Is that holster?"
Yeah.
And she's like, "I dig it."
Yeah.
You know, I really
right,
like
cool.
that. I think that it really shows.
Yeah.
We don't spend very much like Brea Organa, who is probably, you know, I mentioned that Beru basically gets no time. Brea gets even less time.
Yeah.
You know. So she gets this like one line of dialogue, and that's nice, and it kind of shows that she's kind of like this understanding mom, and who kind of lets her daughter be who she wants to be. And then so we get the ship landing, and it's like it's not really surprised because we know that's already Obi-Wan's ship, so it's fine. But Leia doesn't know that, and although she probably should have recognized it, that's fine. But Baylan and Leia have this cute exchange about the kind of the different ways to lead. So basically, if you think back to the very first episode, they had this little spat over how she needed to kind of grow up, quote unquote, and learn how to play politics and become a leader. And she was like, "Ugh, that's so lame and boring, and my cousins are so stupid," right? And so now she's kind of got this new resolve. She's like, "If I'm going to do this, I want to change things." And he's like, "Okay, then we'll change things together."
I love it.
And again, I just stand me some Jimmy Smits. Just give me.
He's so good.
I really hope we get to spend a lot of time with him in Andor.
Yeah.
So that'll be really awesome. And so he has the kindest smile. I feel like he just feels like the nicest guy. And
just a good dad.
Yeah. Right. Just like like you just want to give him a big hug.
Yeah.
And so they're smiling. Everyone's happy. She's wondering if her cousins are coming to visit again.
Yeah.
And instead, it's Ben. And what's funny here is that she's like, "Lola!" and then runs over to the droid first, which I think is very true to children. So that's fine.
Like she's 10, so yeah.
Right. Like that's her dog, basically.
Exactly.
And so Bail has this moment with Ben, and he thanks Ben. And he says, "I fear for your future, or for her future, the Empire grows stronger and bolder." Right, which of course we know they do because they blow up their goddamn planet.
Oh yeah,
bummer. It is a bummer. the biggest bummer, one might say. billions of voices calling out.
Means a lot more now, but
anyway, so the Empire grows stronger, bolder. If you ever need help from me again, you know where to find me. Obi-Wan says, right? Let's hope that day never comes. These two lines together are where they do fall into the trap of being like, hey, don't forget later on they're gonna have trouble and he's gonna call for him, right?
Yeah.
Like the line, I think the way it's handled in Rogue One is way better. He's like, do you know any Jedi? He's like, I know one who I can trust. I'll call upon him.
Yeah.
Right? That works. That all still works if you don't have this line, and I don't think it needs to be here. It feels forced, and it feels like we're acknowledging the timeline, and is that really how people talk in that way? I don't really think so.
Yeah.
So that was where I was mentioning earlier. And Ben and Leia have a quick exchange. And I guess before we get into this last little bit, any last thoughts on kind of Bail and Ben here?
Yeah,
or
I mean,
coming back to Obi.
I just thought this was cute. I like that they kind of she gets to see him again, and they just kind of wrap it all up in a nice little neat bundle.
Won't see you again until I'm almost dead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Until right before we all explode.
Yeah, right. So hey, I guess Bail is on Alderaan when it explodes, right?
He must be.
That's the implication.
Assume?
I think so.
Yeah, he must be.
I feel like I've read.
Or maybe is there something?
No, I think so. In the short, there's a collection of short stories called "From a Certain Point of View," right? Which is really, really good.
I have that book. I haven't read it yet. But.
In that one, I believe there's and I don't know if it's all canon. I'm pretty sure it's not, but it certainly shines some light on it. Like even one of the chapters is from the perspective of Obi-Wan's. Or I think Qui-Gon's ghost.
Oh.
Where he's like forming his own his body again to be a Force ghost. It's very cool.
Yeah.
And but there is a chapter I believe where it's Bail Organa kind of like coming to terms as he realizes that their planet's going to be exploded.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, I think that's true. It's a very good book, and I recommend highly the audiobook of it. There's one for Empire I haven't read yet.
I like to read books in real life.
I don't.
With my eyes.
I do not. I like to read with my ears, please. Let's hope that day never comes. Lame. Anyway, so Ben and Leia exchange have their last little thing, and he says, he's like, oh, what am I going to do now? He's like, I think you should sleep. And
so cute.
There's this big laugh, and we haven't seen Obi-Wan laugh in forever. And like the entire series, he didn't laugh. And there's this just big like throaty chuckle, and he's like, "Oh, that is it." That really landed for me.
It's so perfect. I know. It's just like you just see that like the tensions ease, and it's just, yeah. Ugh.
He really does feel like a big weight's lifted off his shoulders.
Yeah,
hey,
yeah.
Like, despite the fact that it seems like he's moving into his little hut,
Yeah.
He's moving into his little hut.
Becoming his hermit.
He's becoming his hermit life, but it's like. So he is still kind of on Tatooine the whole time.
Yeah.
But I guess it feels like maybe he feels like he can be more free to roam now.
Yeah, maybe.
It's unclear. Okay, so this is really nice. He tells her that he lied about not knowing her parents.
Right.
And then calls her by her full name. And then we get the Leia theme kicking in, and it's beautiful.
Ugh.
And we also get the Force theme later in this bit, but
that's
right now,
tear up.
So yeah, it's great. And so she says, I'll read it here. You are wise, discerning, kind-hearted. These are qualities that come from your mother. And it's like you just can't help but like see Padme's face there in her little face. And then she says, but you're also passionate and fearless and forthright. And these are gifts from your father.
Right.
Both were exceptional people who bore an exceptional daughter. I wish I could tell you more.
Yeah.
It would have been nice if you got to have a conversation like this with Luke.
Yeah.
But I guess they maybe have a chance to do that later, and maybe just off screen.
Yeah,
maybe when he's a Force ghost or whatever. He has his moments where he talks about how his father was a good friend and a cunning warrior.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think this is just a really beautiful moment. It's just so heartwarming and touching, and Ewan's bringing so much warmth to his performance here, and the themes are doing a lot of work, and I just really like, again, this is unlike the previous line of dialogue. This is something that again it speaks directly to character because he's speaking about her character, but it's also speaking to to Obi-Wan's kind of ability to be honest with her again, to be able to think about the legacy that Anakin and Padme were, again, despite their really terrible love story.
Yeah.
We can think about the nice things, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So
it's very heartwarming.
Yeah, she says she'll help her. He'll help her if she ever needs help. From a tired old man.
Yeah. I like that because he just gets so old in 1 year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mentions that they need to be careful to protect themselves.
Right.
This I think is the line that people are using as like why she refers to him as, you helped my father in the Clone Wars, whatever. Although,
right.
I don't feel like we need to justify that line.
No, I don't think so.
I just really don't.
It's
fine.
Yeah, like Bale probably hasn't told her that yet. Like maybe he tells her that later on in
right,
life.
like it's like, hey, remember that guy who saved your life?
Yeah.
Here's all the cool shit we did together during the Clone Wars.
And if she doesn't see him for 10 years, it's like you may be like, oh, maybe I have to remind him.
Right,
who
you don't
I
know
am,
you don't.
Whatever.
I look completely different than I did when I was 10 years old.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So there you go. It's also this like her outfit is similar to her white outfit.
Yes, it is.
So it's got those little bit of callbacks. Okay, so he leaves and they watch. It's literally the shortest visit. He lands on the platform, gives Lola back. They have 2 conversations, then he flies away. So that's it's fairly short. I don't know. He wouldn't want to spend more time on Alderaan, considering again Space Vancouver compared to Space New Mexico. So whatever. And so we go back to Tatooine, and Ben is packing up his cave hideout. He's got this cool leather shoulder pack thing. He finds that T-16 toy from earlier in the series, and he leaves behind a box thing. It's unclear what that thing is, but he leaves it behind. And he gives one last look back. He's wearing white now, so it's kind of the symbolizing. He's kind of really fully recaptured his connection with the Force.
Yeah.
Because he was wearing gray kind of the whole time.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. He's kind of shabby looking.
Yeah, and then he leaves. So I guess any sad memories of leaving this cave?
No, not really sad about him leaving his cave. I
hope he brings that droid that he had buried in the sand.
He had a droid buried in
Remember
the sand?
he had a droid buried in the sand that it was like his like guard dog in case like the like barrier was You remember that?
Is this
from episode 1? It's like from the first episode of the series.
I don't know if I picked that up.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's got like the little like how R2 has the little like periscope.
Yes.
There's a little periscope that comes out of the sand.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know why it's not triggering a memory for me.
Anyway, so I hope he brings that droid with him.
Yeah.
And so he stops by the Lars family homestead one last time, and he's got these really cool goggles. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I was like, where did you get these? They're really awesome. They look like they're snowboarding goggles.
Yeah.
It's like, it's really cool.
Sand goggles.
Yeah. And he said, and then Owen just being a dinkus.
Yeah.
I thought you were gonna keep your distance.
Oh my god.
That's what he sounds like to me in this scene.
Literally, yeah.
And it's like, well, I will. Just take it easy. And Obi-Wan says, you were right. He just needs to be a boy.
Right.
The future will take care of itself. Now, the line, the future will take care of itself, I'm not mad at it as being like an allusion to the future. It just sounds like if you're talking to his dad, a bit of a threat.
Yeah. I guess. Yeah.
Like, don't worry about. Hey, listen, I'm gonna let him be. He's gonna be a kid for now.
Yeah.
I'll be back later, and I'll to get him, and I'll train him when he's older, right? Like, and anyway.
But, I mean, at the same time, it can also just mean we'll see what happens.
Yes,
like,
I know, but that's that's how I interpret it.
I know.
Yeah.
It's just a veiled threat.
Yeah. And then the last little bit here is that the only protection he needs now is you and Beru. And, take care of him. And then there's this, like, little, like, under his breath. He's like, I will.
Yeah.
Don't even worry about it.
Yeah.
And then he's like, and then again, speaking of good performances, Joel Edgerton puts in a great performance here as Owen Lars. And he's like, he's looking at him, and then his, like, lip twitches. And he's like, you know what?
Yeah.
You want to meet him?
Yeah.
And it's just,
I love it.
There's this, it just really warms the heart. And you have this one. He's carrying the toy that he knows he has. That he gets later, and he looks at it, and there's this moment where it's like, I'm like, I didn't really think to think about it. Like, sure, he's met with Owen a bunch of times. Beru knows him obviously, but he's never met Luke.
Right? Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? Except for when he was a baby, I guess. But
for like 10 years, he's actually never met him, which has got to be like so hard.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's
So he offers to let him meet Luke, and then he says hello there.
Oh, I loved it. It was so perfect.
This is what everyone was waiting for. They wanted him to say hello there.
To start, but it's
right.
perfect that they used it at the end, and that was his first interaction with Luke.
Yes.
It's so perfect. Yeah,
right.
I love it.
Yeah, it's great. See, this is where it's like I could be nitpicky here, but it's fine.
No,
it's just like it's just a nice moment. Yeah,
it's so sweet.
Yeah. And then Ben's journey continues as he heads towards, I think, the canyon that Luke gets attacked in from Episode 4.
Oh, okay.
I'm not mistaken. And we see Qui-Gon slowly appears at Force Ghost. Now, at this point of the show, I was like, we haven't seen Qui-Gon yet. And it's daytime in the desert, and it's like this would be an interesting location to see a Force Ghost. Because this would be a new place to see one. Usually it's like nighttime when we see them. And so I love it. It's like he slowly fades in.
Yes, yeah.
And he's like, Qui-Gon?
Yeah.
Like, what? And then he's just, I love this line from him too. And obviously amazing to see.
Oh, I love seeing Liam Neeson.
Liam Neeson back, and he's in the costume.
Yeah.
And he's uncredited, by the way. He doesn't get any credit. There's no credit for him.
Did they use old footage or like
I don't think so.
CGI
I don't know. No, I don't think so. I do not think so. He just if you look in the credits here,
why would they not credit
him? Where is it? Hey, Liam Neeson's around here somewhere. Anyway, Liam uncredited.
Weird.
But I think that might be just to preserve the secret.
Oh, maybe.
And
that makes sense.
So he's just so. I love Qui-Gon so much, and I always loved that he was willing to come back and voice his character in Clone Wars, and I always thought that was so cool. And so he comes here, and I just love his little sassy. Well, it took you long enough.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan says, "I think I was beginning to think you'd never come."
Mm-hmm.
And then the line from Qui-Gon, always so wise, is, "I was always here, Obi-Wan. You were just not ready to see."
Yeah.
And the idea there is that he's always been watching over him. He's always been there with him, next to him. But he's just like, and I also love that this idea that like now he's reached this kind of inner serenity, this kind of inner peace that he is able to see Qui-Gon, but it's like that Qui-Gon wasn't expecting him to see him yet. He's like, whoa, okay, you can see me now. Oh, thank God.
Like, I've always been here, but now you can see me. Cool.
Finally, right? I've been talking to you. You can hear me.
Yeah.
Right? So, but I think it's funny. It's like, come on, we've got a long ways to go. Like, what does that mean? Like, is that?
I think that's with all with Obi-Wan's like Force training and his Force Ghost training, because Qui-Gon's trying to train him how to do this, right?
Right. He has to learn how to become a Force Ghost from
Qui-Gon.
Well, because he first learned how to talk to Qui-Gon through Yoda.
Through Yoda, yeah.
Because Yoda sees Qui-Gon for the first time, and he's like, Master Qui-Gon or whatever.
Yeah.
He's like, oh yeah. It's like, and then,
well, I guess,
and then later in Episode 3, he's like, I learned to speak with your old master. Mm-hmm. This is gonna be very exciting for you. I'm gonna tell you all about it.
Yeah, and he's like, go to him.
Right, and then we have this. I mean, presumably they're communing. Yoda and him are communing through the Force, like he does with Ezra and Ahsoka and everyone else. So he has this moment to learn, and now he's going to be able to learn directly from Qui-Gon.
Right.
And it's such a beautiful thing.
I thought it was in canon that Qui-Gon never learned to actually appear as a physical Force Ghost. So I guess they're maybe retconning that, or maybe there's something else, or maybe they're not using that old canon. But
I also thought that, but I think
they're probably just being like, whatever.
Cooler.
It's such a small.
It's just
piece.
way cooler if he's actually a Force Ghost.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, let's bring Liam Neeson and sit him down next to Ewan McGregor.
It's great.
And it's just beautiful. So there's no reason not to do it, even if it kind of is a bit of a retcon, which it may be.
Which is fine. I don't even know what it's in. It's like maybe one of the books or like a.
I think it's implied, this idea that he's the first one to kind of be able to maintain his consciousness.
Right. Yeah.
But if his consciousness is still maintained within the Force, then presumably he can learn new things, and therefore
that makes sense. Exactly.
He hadn't been able to do that yet. Maybe.
Honestly, that makes sense. Yeah, he should be able to still kind of learn at that point. So yeah, you're right.
And then we get a wide shot, cut to black, the end. What did you think?
Overall, yeah, I honestly just very much like the series. This was my favorite episode out of all of them. I think we probably would agree on that.
It's easily the best one.
It's the best one. Like, it's just
it has all the best
good.
stuff from episode 1 and 2, and then has all the cool fight stuff that actually feels like it has more, weight to it. Yeah, I
feel like it tied everything up in a good way. It packaged it all up super nice. I don't think anybody can be that mad about any other plot holes or anything like that. Like, I honestly think I think they just did a really great job with this finale, and overall I'm gonna watch the series again probably a couple times. So.
Oh, well, yeah, I don't know. I'm not gonna jump right back into it yet, but
I probably will.
I did really, like I said off the top, I thought it was touch and go there in the middle.
Yeah,
the first two,
I get it. There's some chunky spots, but I don't know. Overall,
as a full package, I think it's very good. And this final episode nails the ending.
Yeah.
It's exactly what you needed. I think it opens the door. It leaves the door open for what a potential season 2 could look like.
Yeah.
Which means that he no longer feels like it has to be connected to Luke and Leia. There could be some other element, some other amount of drama that could motivate him to leave Tatooine for a short time.
Yeah.
So I am very pleased, glad that it ended this way.
Me too.
I think the show 100% justifies its existence. I think it feels like it really fits into the canon really well. It gives us more depth and understanding of the characters that we already liked, with only minor trips over that kind of stuff where you can kind of make mistakes, like I mentioned.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it was really fun. I think if we're gonna do a bonus episode at some point, I've teased that I think we should do our favorite Obi-Wan moments. So,
I would love that.
Let's do that some point. I don't know if we'll do that right away. I don't know when the next season of Star Wars stuff is coming out.
We'll look it up.
Whether it's Alderaan or it's Bad Batch, it's one of those two. And Mandalorian will be end of the year, beginning of next year. So there's still lots of Star Wars to come. Still lots of small screen Star Wars to enjoy as we break it all down. If there's a long enough break between now and the next thing, we'll do our favorite Obi-Wan moments. Please hold us to that because I will forget. So I'm looking forward to that. We've kind of talked about the series throughout this whole episode as how it fits together. I don't know if we have too much to say about the series as a whole at this point, other than I think it's largely effective. It has its weak points. It's not perfect, but it's very good. It's great to see these characters back. It's great to see these actors back, and and like I said, like earlier, it's like what didn't we get? There's a little bit of everything for everyone. I don't want to be too nitpicky anymore at this point. That's for the individual recaps and in between these episodes where you can kind of be like, oh, that's kind of weird and that's kind of clunky and that kind of stuff. But as a whole, I think it's very good. I think you could say a lot of those same things about Rebels. Rebels had a lot of clunkiness throughout, but as a whole, it really holds together. This has some of that same feeling to me, where it's in this era of the Empire again, which is an era that it's always feels like a warm blanket to come back to some degree. You've got these characters kind of paying homage to the prequels in a way that I know a lot of people have been excited to do for a long time.
Right. Yeah.
Right. This and really kind of flushing out the connective tissue between the trilogies there. What we could hope for, the best we can hope for, is something along the lines for this that can help flush out the sequel series and make it feel more tightly a part of the larger saga, right? So it was great to see John Williams score. You got an Obi-Wan score out of this. Like, I don't know, you can't really.
Yeah, like, come on.
That's amazing.
That's some really good lines.
It really fills and like I said, there's moments in this like and lines that will live in Star Wars. Up there with all the best memes. Yeah. Right. So
I can't wait to see the memes that are probably going to start piling out.
Oh, there's going to be so many good memes coming out, right? So
seems like most people are going to wait until about Friday for those.
Yes, which I appreciate, and everyone who's I think generally speaking, the internet's been fairly well behaved.
Yeah, for this honestly
in this series. So
I even had an account the other day ask people that followed it ahead of time, like being like, "Oh,
what's the amount of time?"
Yeah, they're like, "What?" I think I'm going to start posting some like basically meme stuff on or meme stuff on Friday, and like people in the chat were like, "Oh yeah, that's fine."
Yeah. All right. So
that gives you more than enough time to catch up and watch.
I think if you really care about the show, you've watched it by Wednesday or Thursday.
Yes. Yeah.
And that if you don't really care, you don't care. So I think that's fair.
Exactly.
We don't like trolls out there, so don't be one.
Yeah.
But I think we have a really great community. It was really great having Kevin and Marcos and everyone in the chat today. It was great. So more of that, less of everything else.
Yeah.
And we'll be back, like I said, very soon with more small screen Star Wars. In the meantime, please follow us on Twitter @TowerBabbleCast, Facebook.com/TowerBabbleCast, head over to our website, towerofbabel.ca, to find everything that we do. If you want to help support the show, go to patreon.com/towerbabblecast as well, and drop us $5. Get some free bonus content for your trouble. It's not free. It's bonus content. It's paid bonus content for your troubles. And join part of that too, because the one thing that I feel like we are missing a little bit is more engagement on those film clubs. So we'd love to see that. And either way, we'll be back with whatever the next thing is. We knew leaving the last series that Obi-Wan was the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what the next thing is. If it's Bad Batch, which I kind of hope it is, because I feel like that'll be a nice palate cleanser before we get what's it called again? I want to say Alderaan, but it's not. Andor.
Yeah.
Before we get Andor, we've been doing this for too long, so my brain's starting to melt.
Yeah.
So I hope it's Bad Batch. I think it's another exploration of the same stuff where we get to kind of see the world fleshed out and built out. So it's very cool. So anyway, we'll be back more with that, and in the meantime, may the Force be with you.